Alphari is missing. We can't find him. Someone help us find him. I think all TL fans are wondering just that. Where is this guy at? Perkz is now caps. As you can see, those watching, J&T and I decided to go with the cap this week as it was ever so fitting. And we're going to do updated power rankings. We are past the midway point in the split. Figured it was very fitting as well to go with the power rankings. J&T, let's start off with the Alphari stuff. You and I were both fairly convinced that he would be back this week, and he is not. Now, I don't mean to call you out, but you were 100% sure that he was coming back, so I'll give you the word. What's going on here?
I don't know. Team Liquid is sandbagging their seeding for playoffs or something. I don't know. That's their plan right now, because based off of what we saw this week from Team Liquid, a replacement is needed in the top lane.
See, I don't look at it that way. I think a replacement is needed more in the jungle than in the top lane. I do agree that Jenkins did have a lackluster week in the top lane. Like, I don't want to ignore that. But he had 4 pretty good weeks and 1 bad week. You know what I'm saying? So, like, I'm not all that much panic mode. But I can't ignore that, like, we all know that Alphari's the upgrade. I think that's the problem, is that we know that this guy was, I mean, yes, he didn't win MVP, but he was right there for winning MVP last split. And that's why no one can get past this, like, where is Alphari? Because we know that even if Jenkins is playing well, we know that Alphari will play better. And I think that's the problem that people are having with it, right?
Yeah, I think the other thing for me is it became pretty obvious 2 weeks into the season that Jenkins was a solid player and was like probably an average top laner in the LCS. Wasn't the best, wasn't terrible, but he had limitations on him. He was basically exclusively playing Gangplank and Akali. Gangplank being his best champion, Akali being one of the most broken champions in the meta right now, and then he would have the occasional Gwen game, who people could also argue is one of the most broken champions in the meta right now. And this was the first week where we really saw him off that kind of style. We saw him on a Nocturne game. He did have one Gangplank game this week as well, and did a weird Aatrox game against FlyQuest. I don't have to say any more about what I think of Aatrox, because I think that pick's horrible.
Yeah, you've been pretty vocal about that.
But I think my point is that he's a solid player, but he has limitations. And I think Alphari clearly is one of the best players in the league mechanically. The way he impacts laning phases by being up 20 to 30 CS, at least that's what he was doing for the entirety of Spring Split. A super diverse champion pool, a reliable guy. Basically, the only flaw on his resume so far was that finals in the LCS, where he was first blooded 4 out of the 5 games. And yeah, I mean, it's not to say that I think Jenkins is. I would definitely argue that the whole Jenkins situation, is better than the King situation in terms of how the player performed on the team and what results that came with. But let's get Alphari back in there, please. 100% next week. If you're not there, there's something else going on. And if that's the case, it's another interesting storyline to follow.
So I definitely think that we have to acknowledge now that there absolutely is something else going on. It does extend beyond Jat, because Jat is gone and he's still not playing. So there's definitely that. I do want to ask you, though, do you agree or disagree with my statement about it's more important to get Santorin for our Mayo than Alphari for Jenkins? Do you agree or disagree?
I think they're both equal. I think they're both needed. They're both greatly needed. I think one is not more important than the other. I think the argument can be made that the Santorin substitution would better impact the entire team because of the mid-jungle, duo and overall synergy with the team. But I think from an individual perspective, Jenkins is much more lacking than Armeo.
Yeah. And so I want to get, I want to stick on this Alphari stuff because like I said, or like we were saying, like, we think there's more to it. My first thoughts are going back to when they signed Dokla. I don't remember what I said to you. I don't even think I said much. I think I just said something like, uh-oh. And I don't want to make it sound like I called this. I did not call this. That's not what I'm saying. But last week we talked about, or you said you were 100% sure Alphari was back, and I said I felt pretty confident. The reason why I wasn't 100% is because of the Dokla signing that we saw a few weeks ago. And I thought, if you were confident that Alphari would be coming back, then you probably wouldn't have signed Dokla to fill in the academy spot. And so that to me was the only, and maybe I'm missing something. If anyone in the live chat or in the YouTube comments can acknowledge something that I might be missing. That's the only warning sign to me that he was maybe not going to be back. But I'm still really, really surprised because, well, let's be honest, TL doesn't look the way they did back in spring. And while there was some stumbles in spring, overall they were a pretty good team. And now we're seeing them. I think they're in 4th place, and it feels like that's where they belong with this current roster.
Yeah, I mean, what I'll say to the Dokla situation is the way that I see it, I saw it more as there was a need for a replacement for Academy because Jenkins wouldn't be able to double dip on Academy games and LCS games if they want him to play at the highest level possible to perform while Alphari was on his break.
Yeah, and if
I air quoted right there for the audio
yeah,
people. But basically, you can't have your you can't have your starting top laner playing both Academy games and LCS games if you want him to be at that highest level. So I think bringing in Dokla is just like something that you had to do. But what I would say is, should Alphari come back in, I would assume that Jenkins will probably just stick with the LCS team for the rest of the season. I don't think that we'll see Jenkins, if he gets subbed out from the starting roster, move back to Academy. I'll just see Jenkins like staying on the main team, whether it's sharing scrim time with Alphari or whether it's just being another person/voice in the room to bounce ideas off of, because I think it's clear that while, running a 6-man roster type thing isn't always the best for results in terms of, we're going to use this player half the time, this player half the time, but just having another voice in the room and someone as an individual for the top lane to bounce ideas off of is always a good thing.
well, I think they may have actually just said that. I think they came out and said that in the press conference that they did last week or 2 weeks ago, whenever it was, when it was Steve and Dodo. Don't quote me on that, but I think so. I think they said that they plan on running the 6-man, which again points to why you need Dokla if you're going to do that. But that also points to maybe they are. Look, they've said many times that there's some personal stuff that Alphari could be dealing with, and maybe they're not convinced that that personal stuff will be rectified this summer. So that is just another reason right there that, yeah. The other thing that I want to mention is the break thing that you put in quotations. They did this for those that didn't watch. I wouldn't even recommend watching it because it was long and it was like nonsense. They did this Bud Light TL thing where they interview. It was like the Team Liquid manager, and he interviewed Alphari. And this came out earlier this week. I want to say it came out just a few days ago or something. And it was awkward. It was really awkward. I don't know. I don't know what to say about it. The one takeaway that I will have from it is that Alphari did acknowledge that he himself had considered taking a break and then decided not to. And then TL came in and said, no, you're taking a break, which means you're getting benched. And the Team Liquid manager in that interview thing that he was doing with Alphari said, like, yeah, you took a break. And Alphari straight up said, whoa, let's not call it a break. I was benched. Let's be clear about that. So it feels like even with Jack gone, the tensions aren't exactly gone. And the other thing that, like I said, that Alphari was considering taking a break on his own, and so I don't know what's going on with that. But it's possible that Alphari maybe changed his mind and wants to take a break. I don't think that's the case with how adamant he was in that interview, saying no, I was benched.
Yeah, I definitely think he was benched. I think the idea, him potentially floating the idea out there that he wanted to take a break, probably just gave Team Liquid the ammo needed to spin it in some sort of a, what you could call a more positive manner, rather, like, because you're saying, oh, Alphari's taking a break, as opposed to saying, oh, he's just straight up benched. So again, there's a whole bunch of like small things that you can nitpick with all these things that Team Liquid has released, starting from that first Jet video all the way up until now, where you had, some back and forth and some very small discussion on like Double Lift's co-stream where he had Alphari on for the Sunday matches. There's a whole bunch of things you can go and nitpick, but I think, there is no clear-cut answer, but I'm still going to stand by what I've said from the beginning, that he was probably benched. He was probably definitely not happy about it. And when it comes to why he didn't play this week, I think, again, it's all speculation, but it maybe came down to like, I don't want to jump in right away. I want to take a week, get acclimated within the team, maybe be involved in the team discussions and whatnot, maybe split scrim time, maybe just let Jenkins have one more full week of scrims to sort of, ease himself back into the team. I don't know if I was Team Liquid, if I was anybody on that Team Liquid team, coaching staff, management, I would say get this guy right in here right now because he's needed. And for whatever reason, if that does not happen this week, I will be surprised. The maximum.
Yeah. It's really just confusing. Like, I don't think there's any other way to put it. I am confused. I can't wait to find out what's going on if we ever do find out, that is. I can't wait because I don't think we've ever seen something handled so poorly and so many different angles thrown at why he could be not playing or why a player is not playing. This is just really, really bizarre. But anyways, I've said my piece. Anything else on this, J&T? Oh, do we want to talk about the tweet about the manager or whatever?
Oh yeah. So this was kind of a thing that like came up and died within the hour or whatever.
Yeah.
But basically, there was this really cryptic tweet that was put out on Alphari's account, basically saying how he prefers his old managers / management to this current one, which everyone was like, "Whoa, what the fuck does this mean? What the hell is going on now?" And then we kind of found out like a couple hours later that it was I think it was that guy who was in the Team Liquid video in that Bud Light thing. It was that guy.
I think so too.
His name's Ben
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah.
He's their manager, and he's apparently just been doing a lot of trolling on all of the Team Liquid social media accounts, including like Tactical and Jensen's, because I was reading a Reddit thread and they like linked previous tweets that were like clearly troll tweets. But to me, like, that just seems so idiotic when you're in the most like drama-filled season of your org's history, or at least your most notable like drama in your org's history, to date, and you're like actively trolling on Twitter accounts, posting even more cryptic things. It just makes no sense. Like, you don't go to a funeral and make jokes. Like, that's that kind of situation. Like, it's just wrong place. Like, this is not the place and or time to be doing these things based on the climate. It was just idiotic. Like, I don't know what to say other than it's just straight up idiotic.
It's trying to put out a fire with gasoline. That's what that is right there.
Yeah.
Like, that makes the thing is, and maybe I don't think this is the case, but I'll just say it. Maybe that's something that Alphari did actually tweet, and the manager's like, "I'll take the hit for that one" or something like that. I don't know. I don't think that's the case. Regardless, whether it was Alphari that tweeted it or whether it was the manager, it's just dumb, regardless of who did it. Like, there's no reason to troll. But yeah, then later on, Alphari came out and said, "Guys, I have no hard feelings towards Ben or TL management. Tweets were him having fun and trolling on my PC while I was away. Stop making Reddit threads about every little stupid piece of bullshit and just chill a bit." The only thing is that I don't think that that's not a little stupid little thing, honestly. Because if people thought that was him, yeah, exactly. It's not a little thing. I mean, it might be a little thing now that we find out it was someone else, but if that's Alphari, that is like, oh my god, what a nightmare. But I digress. All right, let's talk about hats.
Weird. I guess what happened on Friday, right? Where Perkz basically came out for the C9 game against, who are they playing?
I don't remember.
No, not FlyQuest.
Who the hell did
they played Immortals on Friday?
Okay.
And Perkz was wearing a hat, which was funny. And we found out after the game had happened, Perkz was giving his post-game interview and was basically saying that he has, very sensitive eyes. So all of the lighting on the LCS stage was sort of, I don't remember exactly what he said in terms of if it was giving him a headache or if it was having, giving some difficulty, on stage. And so he was finally given permission to wear a hat on stage because I think Sneaky also talked about this on the Double of Co stream, how hats had previously been banned to wear on stage. I even remember, when was this? This was like, I think there was maybe it was a game in like Season 8 Worlds where like Sneaky was trying to wear a hat one game, and like there was like a mic check that C9 released where like the ref was basically saying how you're not allowed to wear a hat, and then Sneaky said in a post-game interview like they took away my hat so I had to smurf or something like that. I think this, maybe it was it was Season 7 Worlds, now that I think about it. Pretty sure it was Season 7 Worlds.
So a couple of things. One, I want to clarify, like you were saying you didn't remember what Perkz said. I watched his interview today with Travis, and he said that his eyes were like watering up as he was watching, like as he was playing, and like he wasn't focused on like, yo, should I rotate here? Should we try to make a play here? He's like, I was so focused that like my eyes are just tearing up. And so like that's one of the issues that he was having. I guess he had some sort of eye surgery in the past. I don't know if it was recent or a long time ago, but yes, his eyes are sensitive to like a lot of lighting, and so like he can't focus on the game, and I guess is what he was saying. And then he came out with a tweet that was like what the hell is the problem? Like, why did this take so long to get fixed? Like, what was it? It was
Yeah,
like 5
I
this
have
week?
I have the tweet up. It says Riot wouldn't want to lower the lighting for me for the past 5 weeks, even though I had medical needs for it, and stage lighting is a part of Ready Check. Really cringe that I needed to get a doctor's note for that. Had no problems internationally or in LEC.
Yeah. So honestly, I don't blame him at all. That's so weird that such a simple problem took so long to fix. No?
Yeah, that was the main thing that was kind of confused about when this whole topic was being, talked about and being circled around the community, was that, Cloud9 was, or at least both from Cloud9 and from what Chris Greeley said, like it was a bit of a miscommunication and this sort of thing didn't reach the right people, and that's why it was so delayed. And that just makes absolutely no sense to me, because I'm going to give Cloud9 the benefit of the doubt that they have been saying this since week 1, because that's how Perkz is sort of making it out to be. And if Cloud9 was saying since the beginning of the season that they needed this and this was a problem for Perkz, it just feels like it's incompetence from the LCS that this didn't reach the right people, or this was a topic that wasn't being taken seriously or something like that, and that it does have to take like a doctor's note to like make an actual change or get some sort of solution.
Yeah. Yeah, the weird thing is that they can't fix the lights. Like, so I actually get why you have the hat rules, because I'm wearing one right now, and like my headset isn't on as tight as it normally is. So you would make the argument that the reason why they're not allowed hats in the first place is because if your headset isn't locked on, you could hear the communication from the other team. That would be the reason why hats aren't allowed in the first place. And so I actually see, like, I can notice it a little bit. With that said, like, turn down the lights, forehead. No,
Yeah, I
I
mean,
don't know. Or at least you shouldn't take 5 weeks to come to a solution. Let's say that.
yeah, I mean, what I will say to the situation of like there being some implications of like, oh, maybe your headphones aren't exactly on properly, or since they're slightly different on your head, you might be able to hear something in the background. In terms of like FPS games, like in Counter-Strike, you're not allowed to wear hats whatsoever, because the potential difference in audio from like having a player's headset on while wearing a hat is actually sort of like game defining, because crowd noise is a very important thing in Counter-Strike.
Yep.
Or
Yeah.
in a lot of FPS games, and pros have even admitted to like using the crowd as a means to gain extra information. I'll go on a very small tangent here, but one thing that like various Counter-Strike pros have said, like sometimes they'll just look at random walls and just like very faintly listen for any crowd noise, because sometimes if you're just like staring at a guy through a wall, the crowd might start getting excited, or you might hear some noise in the background, and pros kind of use that as information. But I think in a game like League of Legends, like that doesn't really even apply. And as opposed to,
Go ahead. Sorry.
well, I don't think it applies whatsoever. And in terms of maybe you'd be able to hear the other team's comms, I think that would be true if there was no audience in the LCS, which there is right now. But if there actually was like a full studio audience with the broadcast and whatnot, I don't think that would matter. But it's kind of crazy that we're even talking about this in the first place, because it's a bit ridiculous.
The reason why I went is because, and it might be different now with the new stage, but I think they were talking about it on the co-stream this weekend. I think Medios was talking about how you used to be able to like hear the crowd if someone's on Baron or something like that. And I can't remember when this was, but I've heard, okay, someone in the live chat I was just about to say, I've heard Aframu say before that he has heard something for Baron Sneak. So I'm glad BNT 250 in the live chat brought this up, because I was thinking the same thing. Something was telling me that Afro had said something before as well. So thank you for confirming that. So I mean, you're totally right that it is way more impactful in a game like CS. But the point is that it can have an impact in the LCS, and therefore, like, even just that alone, even if it's rare, that's enough of it. It's already enough to be a problem, right? And something that needs to be fixed. Now, I guess maybe the stage is different nowadays, and maybe you can't feel rumbling anymore. But that's stuff that would, I guess it doesn't really matter right now when there's no crowd, right? That's the thing.
I'm just gonna read out the Chris Greeley thread that he put out, just to give some context from the other side. And I'll just read it out. It says, first, I want to apologize to Perkz for the discomfort he's felt while playing in our studio. We always want to prioritize the best possible experience for our pros. To offer context to this situation, our lighting levels and designs are in line with other leagues and international events, a setup Riot has generally kept consistent since 2012. So that false sense of security slowed our reaction. Wait, what the hell? So that false sense of security slowed our reaction times, and it shouldn't have. Moreover, information regarding the medical nature of Perkz' discomfort took several weeks to get to the right folks at the LCS. Since then, we've been working with Cloud9 to find both a temporary and long-term solution, ensuring that Perkz is able to play on stage comfortably. What I will say somewhat to that is, just based on watching the LCS and the LEC is definitely more like darker and dimmer than the LCS. Like just based off like straight watching the stream from home, like the LEC, like the whole theme is like black and green, and even like on stage, like the whole stage is black. Whereas in the LCS, the stage is pretty much all brightly lit and like a bright blue. So I don't really buy that. I mean, I guess I can somewhat buy that maybe the lighting and the setup is similar to other international, events and other studios, but the actual setups themselves, I think, are just naturally brighter than the rest.
That's something I'm not gonna lie, I've never really even thought to.
I would just say, like, go watch a champ select from LCS and then go watch a champ select from LEC and just look at, like, the studio in the LEC is much darker. Like, it's all black, and I would think that has to play into effect somewhat if a person like Perkz has a sort of situation where medically it's best for him to be in lower lighting.
Yeah, definitely a weird thing, and I guess they'll come to a solution sooner or later. Just so strange that this is even a problem. It's something I've never heard of, but I mean, hey, I guess that's gonna happen. You know what though? The other thing too that I'll add to this is, like, this is not the first time. Like, players have been complaining that it's like super cold in the arena all split long too, and nothing has really been done about that either.
Yeah.
About their hands being really cold, because I guess the AC is just cranked.
Yeah, I
at
mean,
the LCS.
pros are still talking about that. Like, it feels like
Yeah,
at least in one post game interview every week, or on Twitter or something like that, like people are referencing how cold it is in the studio. And obviously the LCS they've come out and talked about that in terms of, well, normally just with the number of people that are in the studio, the temperature naturally will just increase due to all the body heat, which is, I completely understand that you would normally, like, you're working under the conditions that you have been in the past, but like, we're in a whole different world here. Like, there's no studio. They have said that, like, for all their equipment and whatnot, it needs to be at a certain temperature, but surely, there'd be some sort of solution that you could come to, or the situation should have been addressed sooner.
yeah. And the thing is, with these things taking so long for them to find a solution, I'm going to bring up again in the live chat. BNT says, like, it's crazy that things only happen when you cause a stink on Twitter, and it's like, well, look, you're setting a precedent that you're never going to do anything until someone calls you out on Twitter. So, like, guess what's going to happen in the future, right? Players are going to go right to Twitter whenever there's a problem, because nothing ever happens otherwise. So I think, yeah, I guess I'm not surprised. It's just another thing where the LCS is lacking. I mean, I've kind of lost faith in expecting them to be quick on things, or expecting them to be, what's the word? I don't know. I don't know what the word is.
Bird?
I'm at a loss for words, but basically not dumb. uh, anyways, yeah, I'm not surprised by this anymore. We've come to expect pretty lackluster things out of the LCS as a production, and I guess it's just something to get used to.
If anyone got my Family Guy reference there, thank you. Yeah, I don't know. The LCS, the broadcast as a whole, the setup, all these problems that they've been having both online and now back in person. It definitely, my bar is just lower, like, straight
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, and we sound like broken records, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it always feels like there's always something added to the long list of things that the LCS needs to improve on. This is just another one. Before we get into power rankings, I do want to remind everyone, if you are listening on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button so that you can get that stuff in your feed every week. We go live every Monday at 12:15 a.m. EST, 9:15 p.m. PST for West Coasters. If you want to catch us live, we are always on Twitch Monday nights. Let's get into the power rankings. We wanted to revisit them because, like I said at the start of the show, we are through the halfway mark now. My God, summer goes by fast, but I guess every split goes by super fast. These games are being thrown. We're getting through these games really freaking quick. J&T, I'll let you start us off. Where do you want to go with this one? I think we're going to go from top to bottom.
Yeah, I'll just read them out real quick, just for the audio people. For myself, I have 100T number 1, TSM number 2, Cloud9 number 3, Team Liquid number 4, EG number 5, Immortals number 6, Golden Guardians number 7. We'll talk about that. Dignitas number 8, CLG number 9, and FlyQuest 10. Blue Jay has the same 1 through 6. 100T, TSM, Cloud9, Team Liquid, EG, Immortals, and then he has Dignitas 7, CLG 8, Golden Guardians 9, and FlyQuest 10.
Yeah, so it's interesting to me that you put Golden Guardians 7. I don't think this is like, what? Like, how could you do that? I think some people will be surprised just because Golden Guardians is in 10th place currently. But I mean, we've been pretty vocal. I know I've definitely been very vocal the last couple of weeks that I think Golden Guardians was going to catch FlyQuest. I mean, it's happening already.
Yep.
The only thing that I pretty much think I just flat out disagree with is that they're better than Dignitas. Dignitas is definitely worse. Do not get me wrong. I've been pretty vocal about that as well. But I don't think that you can discount how good their bot lane is out of Dignitas still. I will say I thought that they were better in spring, but I still think that this is a bot lane that can carry games, and we even saw that this past weekend with Dignitas. So that's the only thing, the really big standout. But the other interesting thing is that CLG isn't making playoffs. That's the other standout. Whereas I do think they are. But we will get to all of that stuff, right? Any other quick observations out of you?
This is an indication of playoffs. This is just power rankings on current form.
Yes. Yep. That's fair. Totally fair.
Because while I think it's still possible that Golden Guardians might not make playoffs because of how far back they were to start the split, I still think they're performing much better than, or not much better, but they're performing better than other bottom teams.
So yeah,
which is why I have them 7.
Yeah, and it's interesting though because they're only 1 win apart from each other. So like if you have Golden Guardians at 7, that's why I thought you're basically saying that they are making playoffs. Like if you have them,
I think they are, but there's still stuff that can happen.
Well, and the point that maybe you could try to make, or the argument that you could make, is that, look, maybe I have Golden Guardians 2 spots ahead of CLG, but that doesn't mean they're miles ahead of CLG, right?
Yes.
That's probably what you're thinking, is that, look, I have them ahead, but that doesn't mean that they're going to finish there, and that's, yeah, totally fair. Okay, let's start with 100 Thieves, right? Jesus. I tweeted out about this. They're 13-2 in summer, man. Like, that is ridiculously good, because people were extremely hyped for Cloud9 back in spring, whereas through 6 weeks they were 13-5. Well, 100 Thieves has their 13 wins in a whole week with playing 3 less games in this summer split. So to me, that just goes to show just how dominating this 100 Thieves squad has been.
I just wanted to look up real quick and see, who did they lose to?
I think FlyQuest and CLG.
No, they lost to Immortals in the first game of the season.
Okay, and then it was a bad team. I don't remember if it was CLG. Was it CLG Bongo?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
So that's interesting, that their only 2 losses are Immortals and CLG, and they've beaten everybody else, and I think, they've looked the best, clearly, by far. I don't think anybody's close, personally, in terms of who has played the best this split. Obviously, TSM is close in terms of both standing and summer records, but in terms of just like overall play, 100 Thieves are clearly the best. The most notable thing to talk about is Abadage in the mid lane. Clear upgrade over both DeMonte and
Ryoma.
I was about to say Huhi for a second, but he's their support, no longer their mid laner. But yeah, Abadage is clearly a much better player than the both of them combined. He can play both of the styles that they had played previously and were successful on. He can also play the supportive style in the mid lane. We've seen him whip out the Karma once or twice ever since the first week, where he played it 3 times. Abadage is super, super well rounded. He's currently the best mid laner in the league, and I don't think it's close. And, one thing that I will say about this team, the one negative that I've been talking about for almost, it feels like, since the start of spring, is Someday. I think is actually playing a lot better. I think he's had a pretty solid last 2 weeks. He does feel like a player that, has some carry potential, like we've seen in the past. He's reviving the old Someday just a little bit. There's been a couple games where he's played super, super well. The Gwen game against Team Liquid was really great. I think he was the only reason that they won that game against Team Liquid 2 weeks ago, I think it was. But I think this team is just super solid top to bot. If I had to pick an MVP for the split, it would just be somebody on this team. I think you could go through anybody from Closer all the way through to Huhi. You could pick one of those players, and I'd be like, sure, I'm okay with that. Because I don't think I don't think there's any other team in consideration for an individual being MVP. Because I think of Closer, Abadage, FBI, and Huhi, they're all top in their role. It's not close, and they're just playing insanely well.
That's the interesting thing to me, is that you could argue there are 4 MVP candidates on this squad. Now, for me, I don't think I would throw Closer in there, despite the fact that he has been probably the best jungler. I think that there were some performances where I didn't feel like he was having that much of an impact, but that's really nitpicky because this guy's been good. Like that, I have to acknowledge that even saying that, it feels wrong. But the thing is, it's that his teammates have just been better, honestly. The talk that I hear the most is, I think I hear Abadage as being talked as the most, or Abadaga all of a sudden, by the way. Well, I don't know I don't know when his name changed to Abadaga, but anyways, that's the one that I hear the most talks about for MVP. Me personally, I'm still on the Huhi hype train. It's weird because so many of his teammates have said like he should have gotten an MVP so far, but it just feels like each week they just take turns of who's getting their little statue for player of the week. This past week it happened to be Closer.
Mm-hmm.
Go
Go
ahead.
ahead. Oh, I didn't really have too much more to say. I was just gonna give some final thoughts. Basically, I don't know if like for me, there's not a whole lot to say about this team other than they're the best right now. The one thing that I will say is I think it will be very interesting to see how this team does perform in playoffs, because while I do think that yes, they're the best team right now, it is still best of ones. And I think one problem that a lot of people have pointed to in the past, with Reaper specifically, who's their new coach, by the way, is his drafting in best of fives, because he does have some int drafts, people would say, in playoffs, in crunch time. And I think, what this team does look like when this, I wouldn't even call it a new meta, but the meta is definitely changing with patch, 11-13. What the meta will look like moving into playoffs, how that will affect 100 Thieves, and if we, we don't get those int drafts from Reaper.
Yeah. The other point that I wanted to bring up was the Reddit thread that made the point that it's been 757 days.
Oh
since
yeah,
we've had
that
a team
was yeah.
that's not TSM Cloud9 TL in first place, but by
Sole
themselves,
possession of
right?
first place. Yeah, sole
by
possession.
them. Yeah.
That was the main thing.
And so, like, that is a long time, guys. That is a long. What is that, like 2 years or something?
Yeah.
It's a long time, and it's kind of refreshing, if I'm being quite honest. Because I don't think you want a league where it's just always the same teams running show. Now, with that said, you did bring up playoffs. Like, they still have to get through playoffs. They are very far from this being, like it's a marathon, not a sprint. It's cliche, but it's true. Like, you still got a lot of time to go. And if you suddenly have a little collapse, which we did see them do in spring, I need to remind people of that. We could be talking about something totally different and be talking about a totally different team a month from now. So while everything looks great right now and they are hands down the best team in the league and they're in their own tier right now, they got a lot of time for other teams to catch them, so they can't get complacent.
Yeah, and then just the last thing I'll close with is, as we mentioned, like there's still 4 weeks of season left. Cloud9 was in summer split. They were looking. This is season 10. They were looking amazing. 9-0, had completely swept their first round robin, ended their second round robin pretty poorly, going 4-5. Obviously missed Worlds after they'd had such a dominant spring split and start to summer. While I don't think that's going to happen with this roster, because I don't think we're seeing as huge of a meta shakeup as we did previously in that summer split. Although I do think that the meta is changing slightly. I still, It'll be interesting to see because I think historically both Cloud9 and Team Liquid, the two teams that are sort of slumping right now in terms of the top teams, they are historically very good in best of fives and are very good at making mid-series adjustments. And I think we will be in for some banger playoff series for sure.
Yeah, should be good. A little random thing. Did you see the 100 Thieves was tweeting they were doing karaoke? I just thought that was the
I did not.
funniest thing, trying to picture Reaper doing karaoke. I find that would be so funny. But
Or like Sunday or something.
yeah, like I don't like honestly, pretty much any of them thinking about that now. Honestly, watching any of them do karaoke would be hilarious, but that's totally irrelevant. Let's move on to TSM. We both have them number 2. But like we said, we think that there's a pretty steep drop off after 1, right? We think 100 Thieves is in their own tier list. But
Yeah.
TSM number 2, taking down Cloud9 this weekend. Did they take who else did they beat?
Um, they lost the game to Dig on Friday,
Yeah,
and
that
then
was
they
weird.
beat Immortals on Saturday.
Okay.
Where it was just a shit show that game. Like Immortals looked terrible, and TSM just rolled them hard.
So where I want to start with TSM is their bot lane, because I've been fairly critical of their bot lane, and I think honestly for good reasons. I don't think that they were anything special, but this weekend they actually had they gained a lot of advantages for themselves in the bot lane. Like they won, I think all of their lanes. Where I could be critical is that they ended up giving some kills back in, I think, all of those games. Maybe.
Not the
So
Cloud9 game.
in the Cloud9 game, there was a TP bot, and Cloud9 capitalized on getting kills back, and then they ended up getting plates. You
I
remember
mean,
that?
maybe like they still completely smashed that lane. I think
Yes, yeah.
one
of
death,
course.
like that one death didn't really. Yes, well, it mattered because they were snowballing pretty hard. It stalled the snowball a little bit, but they absolutely fisted Cloud9 in bot
So
lane.
yes, yeah. But the reason why I think it's worth bringing up is because we saw on Hotline League tonight. This is what's so fascinating to me, is that it's not necessarily wrong for people to be critical of the bot lane, but we saw TSM's bot lane be good. We saw them beat Cloud9's bot lane. Yes, Falcon inted level 1, we know. But after all of that, I thought it was really interesting that I'm watching Hotline and I'm going, they're talking about how TSM's bot lane didn't look that good because they ended up giving back some leads and stuff like that. And I was like, wow, like they finally had a good weekend. And the takeaway from the TSM C9 game wasn't that C9 ran it down. It was that TSM's bot lane still couldn't close out the game in enough. Like it took them too long to close out the game. And that's what was kind of interesting. I felt like if you were a TSM fan, you'd probably be really frustrated by hearing the criticism thrown towards TSM. But that doesn't necessarily make them wrong. Because if you do get a lead, like that significant of a lead, you probably should close the game out quicker than 40 minutes, right?
Yeah, I mean, just to continue on this, I think Artemis put this pretty well on Hotline League. Basically, how a lot of teams in the LCS are gifted their wins and are basically the winning team doesn't necessarily have to close the game out. The losing team has to sort of make a play and run into the other team. And using that example specifically, and when Artemis talked about this, Cloud9 recognized that they had the better late game scaling comp, and just decided to straight up not fight TSM and just freeze their waves and farm for late. We saw, multiple times Cloud9 held like a lot of freezes that entire game after they lost their tier 2 tower on 2 separate occasions. They froze that bot lane for like 5 minutes each and basically completely slowed the game down, opted to not fight TSM at any objectives, gave up 3 Barons, gave up Cloud Soul, and really only decided to fight when Elder Drake spawned, because you basically have to fight at Elder Drake or you're going to lose the game. But I just thought that was super interesting how I think in that game specifically, it wasn't really a matter of, Cloud9, like, I guess, sorry, what I'm saying is with TSM's lead, it was kind of like Cloud9 opted to say, hey, you have to come win the game because we're not going to lose the game for you. And I think that's what kind of, gives me some reservations about TSM in general, is I think that looking at a lot of their wins, it is a lot of, teams kind of just throwing themselves at TSM, and with TSM having the better late game comp and often playing a very slow early game and scaling to late game and just out team fighting and out rotating and out, objective setting up other teams. That's how they win. And when they're against a team where they're evenly matched in that, and then also have this huge lead, they can't do it. And, I think you mentioned it. There's a steep drop off from 1, and I think anywhere from 2 to 4 is still relatively close.
Yeah, and I think that's the worry. If I'm a TSM fan, I recognize that right now I'm better than Cloud9, I'm better than TL, but the problem is we kind of know that we don't know. I shouldn't say we know, but we suspect that Cloud9 and TL still have a lot of room to level up. And I think that's where TSM fans would get a little bit worried, is that I don't know if there really is that area for TSM to level up some more, but we're fairly certain that TL and C9 can. And so that's
Yeah.
where I think the worry is for TSM. But with that said, they're still looking good in just about every role right now. And so, I mean, you should still be happy. You're sitting in second place. You currently have that first round bye. And I mean, you also have what we think is going to be a meta that angles more towards mages, which is definitely a good thing for TSM and PoE. So there's definitely some positives for TSM, and I think they should be happy being in the second spot right now. I think they definitely belong in the number 2 spot in the power rankings.
Yeah, the way it stands right now, they are 2 wins ahead of Cloud9, and are they 4 wins? They're either 3 or 4 wins ahead of Team Liquid in terms of standings, combined standings for spring and summer, if we're going to talk about playoff seeding. And the main thing to note is they own the head-to-head against both Cloud9 and Team Liquid, which gives them a huge advantage towards the end of the season, in terms of, if one of these teams wants to overtake them. So I think they kind of are, barring a big collapse from TSM, or, Cloud9, destroying these last 12 games of the split, they kind of have second place on lock right now. And I think, it does put them in a, basically, you're going to be the second seed, but you're going to be playing one of Cloud9 and Team Liquid probably in your first playoff series. And that's not something to really, like, I don't think TSM fans and TSM, they're not out the deep end yet. Like, they got a ways to go. And like you just mentioned, I think TSM there's not a lot of room for TSM right now and their ceiling, whereas you said for Cloud9 and Team Liquid, they still got a lot of room before they hit their ceiling.
Last quick question for you. Just give me a yes or no. Is Spica in the talks for MVP?
That was going to be the other thing to talk about, because there was that.
Just give me a yes or no. Just
Yes.
give me a yes or no. Really? See, I heard that on Hotline League tonight, and I thought, fuck no. But the thing is, I've heard so many people talk about how Spica's having a great split this year, and I've been pretty vocal on this podcast that I don't think he's been anything out of the ordinary. I think he's been a good jungler. And so I was really surprised by that. You're not the first person that I've heard say that he is in the running, and they talked about it on Hotline, and I think they even talked about it on the dive last week. I'm coming to this conclusion that maybe I'm just not giving Spica his fair share. I said this before in the past that I'm going to have to keep my eye on Spica, but I don't see TSM doing much in the early game. And to me, that doesn't always fall on the jungler, but a lot of times that falls on the jungler to make plays somewhere, especially with how much Volibear he's playing. You should be setting up dives somewhere. And that's not just on the jungler. You need to coordinate with waves and stuff like that. But the point is that I don't think he makes that much happen in the early game. And I think that's where I say no way is he in the conversation for MVP, because I would go with all 4 of those 100 Thieves players right away before I went with Spica.
Yeah, to talk quickly on, his early game impact as one of your faults for him. I'm going to reference Artemis on Hotline League. That guy was really great on that show, by the way.
He was fantastic.
That guy was like super, super intelligent. But the way that he basically phrased it was, jungle pretty much is no longer like an individual role, kind of like how laning is. And it's basically, all about, at least in the first 10 minutes of the game, is team coordination. And so when I do see a lot of inactivity from the TSM side, while I think in the past I would have put that directly on Spica and saying he doesn't do a lot or doesn't get a whole lot done, I do think that is a decision made by TSM because of the way that they play and their best play style, which is slow early game, skill the late game, out team fight, and out objective control the other team. And so while I would say a percentage of that is on Spica for maybe not doing a whole lot in the early game, because who knows, he could be making, better decisions in the early game or better on the fly decisions. I do think it's just like a stylistic thing from TSM where they don't do a whole lot. And I don't expect them to do a whole lot.
And that is totally fair, but then if you're gonna have someone up for MVP, where is it that he's making the really big difference? Like, don't get me wrong, I think he's had a lot of impact on his games, but to me, nowhere near MVP status. And so that's why I want to ask people, like, if you're putting him in the running for MVP, are these performances that he is absolutely, like, you know what I'm saying? He's had some really good Xin Zhao games, um,
I still
but
think
that's
he's
the
had
only
some
thing
really
that
good
stands out
Volibear
to me.
games. I think some of his Volibear games have been really
Yes,
good.
Volibear's is.
Not,
I thought his Volibear's been okay. I didn't think it was amazing,
yeah,
but I thought it
not.
was good.
I mean, even in this Cloud9 versus TSM game, I thought he did a pretty decent job in the early game. He made a really nice follow up play, like level 2 bot lane, and not this Cloud9 TSM game, but the previous one, where they had Huni and Lee Sin. Spiga did a lot of work early on in that game, ganking for Huni and killing Fudge like 3 or 4 times in that lane, like pre 15, 20 minutes. So I do think that Spiga has been doing very well. To speak to the MVP point, I think one thing, both in traditional sports and in esports, that is kind of lost with MVP is, I think normally MVP is just best player on the best team. And if I were to actually, if we were to truly say who is like the MVP, which is the most valuable player, I think, taking Spica away from TSM currently would make them a much, much worse team, as opposed to taking any one of those 4 100 Thieves players off that team and putting an average player in. Because I do think Spica individually does bring a lot of, I wouldn't even call them intangibles, because like smiting is like a pretty big part of like, jungle
It's
and
clutch
whatnot.
factor.
Yeah,
It matters.
clutch. Yeah. But I think, Spica does bring a lot to the table that an average LCS jungler wouldn't. And I will say, yeah, I will back myself that if you took an average player on 100 Thieves and put them in any of jungle to support, they would still be relatively the same, obviously a little bit weaker. But I think if you took Spica off of TSM and put like Armeo on there, I think that team would be much worse than they are.
I mean, that is the. I mean, Armeo, come on, man. That's the opposite end of the spectrum here.
Okay, but even put like Sven Skaren on there, or like, I don't know.
Your
trying to
point
think
is
of
still valid. No, but I get. Besides that, I get your point though.
Yeah.
Is that if you put another jungler in, I just don't think Armeo is the fair one to be like an average jungler.
I think
But
he's
it's
average.
a fair thing.
I think Armeo's better than people give him credit for. I think he's solid.
Well, we'll get to TL in a second. But anyways, I'm gonna keep my eye on Spica because I am a fan. Like, I love Spica. I want to see him do well. I just don't think that he's been MVP status. So that's been really surprising to me, and maybe my opinion will change in the near future, but we will see. Let's move on to Cloud9, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'll let you start. Go for it.
I mean, I don't really have a ton of confidence. Not a ton of confidence. I don't have 100% confidence that TSM is the second best team in the league, because if Cloud9 would have beat TSM, I 100% would have put Cloud9 above them. And the only reason that I didn't put Cloud9 above TSM is because they lost to them. And I think, we'll just talk quickly about that Cloud9 TSM game from the Cloud9 side of things. Vulcan just had a really grief game. I think, other than that, like, it's really hard to play that game out when your support does Zai level 1. You then have no lane pressure going into bot lane against Kalista Nautilus, and your Sven sitting there on the first wave with no support, playing Aphelios, who has the worst level 1 in the game in terms of AD carries because he has no ability at level 1. And like I said, you're playing against Kalista Nautilus. You have to back on 0 CS after 3 waves into the game. Spica has a really nice path where he goes bot lane level 3 and kills Vulcan, making a really nice flash onto Vulcan, timing it with the E. I think just Vulcan had a really terrible game, and I think you replay that Cloud9 TSM game 10 more times, I think Cloud9 comes out on top more than 5, and my only reason that I didn't put C9 too was because they lost to them. I just couldn't do it, I guess.
I would even go as far as to say, not that he had a bad game. I thought Vulcan had a bad weekend. He looked pretty bad in the Immortals game as well. He went to like flash taunt in the bot lane, where like he could have easily landed that against Destiny and Raze, and then Perkz like TP down probably because he called like, yeah, I got this flash taunt play. That didn't work. And he went for a lot of aggressive plays that just didn't work on the Galio. And so I thought that he had.
Oh, yeah, he did. That was a bad game. I'm just remembering it now. That was a bad game.
Yeah, so that's what I'm getting at is like it wasn't just one bad game. Like Vulcan looked really bad this weekend,
I thought his Team
and
Liquid game was good.
really out of
I can't
sorts.
say that his Team Liquid game was bad. I'll say he had a really bad 2 games. But
Well,
to
okay,
say
here's the
that,
thing: if you have 2 out of 3 bad games, that's a bad weekend, right?
I mean, I don't know. I think it's hard to say. I don't really see it like that. Like, I don't, like 1 minus 2 is -1. Like, I don't see it quite like that. I think bad weekend. Like, my
If
point
you
is,
had, sorry, go ahead.
I just think my point is, like, specifically in that TSM game, like, it's really hard to come back from the whole early game situation. And I think
Hmm.
that combined with the really grief engage that they did at like mid lane Raptors on the Cloud9 side, where Vulcan caught Spica with a hook in Raptor Pit, and then I would assume called for the engage, and Perkz followed up with, the Shurima Shuffle. Let's just like step back for a second. Let's engage with a Zero ulti on the target that has the Volibear ultimate, the dash that's unstoppable. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I just think I guess I'm kind of giving him the benefit of the doubt here, but I would kind of throw away that TSM game in terms of like not necessarily a summary for the weekend, because I think he had a not so great weekend. I wouldn't call it a terrible weekend, but it's hard to take a lot away from that game when it was just clearly a really bad game.
For me, it's like if this was anyone on Cloud or on FlyQuest or Golden Guardians or CLG that had the weekend Vulcan had, they'd be getting a shit ton of flame. That's the way I look at it, and so I do think that if you have 2 games out of 3 where you look bad and where you're costing your team a lot of mistakes, honestly, I think that's a bad weekend. Especially if you do that week over week, people would be like, "You got to get rid of this guy." So it's not to say that Vulcan's bad or anything. He just had a bad weekend, and that's the way I look at it. And I mean, it is what it is. I think we fully expect Vulcan to be better for the rest of the split. I don't think we expect him to run back these kind of performances on a regular basis. I think that's fair to say, right?
Yeah, I guess my
Yeah.
main point was that, like, to summarize and just say he had a bad weekend would, I think, be taking away credit from his Recon game, which against Team Liquid, which I think was really, really good.
Okay. Who else you want to talk about? You want to talk about that nasty Perkz R2 on the Collie?
Oh my god, that
That was
was just
gross.
like, just nerf this champion, man. Like, it's getting a bit of nerfs next patch with, like, I think it's E is getting damaged. Both E is getting a damaged nerf. I think both the E1 and the E2. And I think they're nerfing something else. I don't know whether it's on Q or whether it's on R. The champion just does way too much fucking damage. Like, it is
Yep.
absolutely disgusting. I know he's fed on Akali. I think at the time he was like 202. But to just like
Yeah.
to Q and then R2 4 people and basically almost insta-gib 2 of them and set 2 others to like 300-400 HP is just ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree. I
Nobody
think the
like
champion's absolutely
nobody
busted.
likes this champion.
Yeah.
Nobody does.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I think that champion's absolute bullshit. That champion has like a 65% win rate still, or something like that in major regions. I don't know how that champion's getting through. Honestly, I have no idea. Although, then again, well, I will get to CLG later, but we saw what Finn did with it in the top lane, and he just hard lost his team
Oh
the game
god,
on the Akali.
please.
So there is, I guess, there's variance with the pick. But yeah. Anyways, another thing that Perkz highlighted in his interview with Travis was like they've only had like 6 days of scrims with this lineup since Sven has come back. And so, yeah, we have Cloud9 in the 3 spot right now, but like we've said, there's still a lot of room for this team to get better. I think people are always going to acknowledge that, especially when we know what playoff Perkz can look like. So that's the only thing that I'll say. It's still some copium takes with Cloud9, but I think it warranted copium takes nonetheless.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think that stuff like that is super, super important. Like, if you only have, like, people will even say, like, 2 weeks of scrims during the LCS season isn't
Yeah.
2 weeks. It's 3 days each week. And
Yep.
teams like 100 Thieves and teams like Evil Geniuses and teams like TSM have been scrimming, yes, during the entire season, but also have been doing full weeks of scrims, 1 month to 3 weeks before the start of the season. And in Cloud9's sake, they only did one basically normal week, which is 3 days. So again, bit of a copium take, but they got a lot of room to grow. And
Yeah.
it's clear that individually they're not at their peak either. And, but what I will say is I think Blabber actually had a pretty decent week. I think he's been getting a little bit better.
Yep.
Obviously, isn't like the same Blabber that I know and love, who just absolutely smurfs on everybody. But I think Diana obviously is a very strong pick right now, and I think it's definitely a Blabber style of champion that does
Absolutely.
have a lot of strong early game skirmishing and does a fuck ton of damage in team fights with the ult. And I think that's kind of like the perfect Blabber champion right now, and I think we'll be seeing more Diana from him in the future.
Yeah, I completely agree. Anything else on C9, or do we want to move on to our next copium
Yeah,
take
we'll
team?
move on, but yeah,
Because
everything's
TL,
everything's back to normal in the LCS. Team Liquid's fourth.
yeah, true. But I mean, in all seriousness, I think TL is another team where, of course, you're going to get copium takes because you still don't have your starter in the top lane or in the jungle. And despite that, I mean, when you have 40% or 2/5 of your lineup that are backups and you're still performing what I would say is good, not great, that's still not too bad, honestly.
Yeah,
The only thing that I'm upset with if I'm a TL fan is like, yo, we running out of time here. Like we gotta get our starters back in and give them some reps so that going into playoffs you can rebuild that synergy that you always want to have going into playoffs. That's the only thing that really stands out for me. The one thing that I want to bring up that Freak brought up on the broadcast this weekend was that um, Jenkins is lowest in the league in jungle proximity and still has a fourth. He's fourth in CSD in the top lane. And this weekend, even though he had a rough weekend, especially the 100 Thieves game, he got hard camped by closer in that game.
he did.
Um, and so it's not this is like, again, this is a lot of copium here, but like Jenkins has still been good for most of the split, and so even if Alphari doesn't come back, it's not the end of the world. Like I mentioned at the start of the show, I think it's Santorin that you got to get back in there, because I think that you are heavily handicapped in the jungle, not because I think Armeo is awful, but because I think there are definitely some picks where you can't play through Armeo, like we saw last week when we had him on the Olaf versus TSM. That's where, like, I feel like you're really lacking. Like, I don't trust Armeo to be that guy that you could put the game in his hands. And so that's where I think TL is suffering just a little bit until Santorin has, or hopefully fixes his health issues.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just a bit worried, given the Santorin situation, that even if Alphari comes in this week or next week, that Santorin is most likely probably going to be coming in first week of playoffs, or at least he's going to be coming in like last week of the LCS, because there's not much more room for Team Liquid to gain and or lose in terms of playoff seeding, because they're 2 wins ahead of EG and they're 2 wins behind Cloud9. And I just think, due to the nature of them, they are going to pick up wins against all the teams below them. I think it will be pretty difficult for Team Liquid to either rise or fall in the standings unless, the starters do come back in. So I kind of worry that, Team Liquid is going to most likely be going into playoffs with Santorin only coming back within the week or right then and there. And I think, one bad week and you're either in losers bracket or you could be out.
And I think the problem with the Santorin thing is that when it comes to health issues like that, it's so unpredictable that maybe we don't even see him for the rest of summer, including playoffs, right? Who knows?
Yeah.
Because this is an issue that he's been dealing with since playoffs of spring, right? It's been months. What was that, like March? Or was
April
it
or something.
April?
Yeah.
It was late April was the
Mid-April.
finals, but I think I don't know if he started having the
Mid-April.
issues in early. The point is, it's been a while, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so there's no guarantee that these issues are going to go away anytime soon. And so maybe if you're TL, you are heavily relying on Armeo to step up and to grow that champion pool so that you can see him succeed on things more than just the Sejuani and those kinds of picks.
Yeah, the other thing that sucks about, Santorin's situation is, unlike benchings, like, it's a medical issue. Like, he most likely is having limited practice as well. He's either not playing at all or having very limited playing time, and most likely not scrimming either. Like, sometimes even if you're benched or like you're kind of splitting scrims, like, you're still getting reps in, you're still kind of communicating with the team, and you're still involved. But I would assume that, his practice is super, super limited in terms of actually playing the game, and at least playing the game at a high level in terms of, like, the reps that you're getting, because he's not playing scrims. Probably he's probably strictly playing solo queue, and it's impaired solo queue.
Yeah. It honestly feels really, really bad because Santorin was one of the best junglers, if not the best jungler last year. I mean, Blabber was for a little while and then he fell off. But the point is, Santorin
Season
was
10,
like,
you're saying. Yeah.
yeah. Did I say
Yeah,
last
yeah.
year or
No,
last
you
split? I
did,
meant
but for some reason I thought you were talking about last split, and I was like, but no, you're
it's
right.
good to clarify that stuff. Yeah, last year, season 10, he
Yeah,
was one of the best junglers in the
was. I would
league.
say he was the best.
Yeah, and that's right. People could argue that, but he's definitely up there, right? So, and we're definitely not seeing that anymore because we can't see him altogether, and because even if we do see him, we're not even going to know, like you said, if he's getting that practice. And so it just feels so bad to see a guy. What's the word? I don't regress due to reasons with like that are beyond his control, I guess is what's really, really sad. I do want to talk about a little bit of positives with TL. I think Jensen's really starting to ramp up quietly. He's just good, man, especially with mages that we're expecting to see come back into meta more. His LeBlanc has always been good. They showed the record for his career on LeBlanc in LCS. It's like 18-4 or something like that. Maybe it's 18-5 because they might have lost that game. The point is, he still even looked good in the game that he lost. That's a really dangerous pick. And if they keep putting Jensen back on LeBlanc, I think that this team can get wins just through him alone. I think he's starting to look really, really good. And yeah, I think that's going to be a problem for teams to deal with when Jensen's playing hard carry champions like that.
Yeah, he's got a 78% win rate on the champ over 37 games. It's pretty much his highest win rate champ. That's like more than
maybe
that. Technically it's his second highest win rate champ that has more than 3 games. The only one that's higher is Zillion.
If he played 37 games, I wonder if that's counting worlds and or playoffs.
It's his whole career, so
yeah, so it could be starting. Yeah, it could be counting like worlds and or playoffs, and maybe the stat they showed on LCS was just regular season or something, or it was just LCS. I don't know, but the point is, he's fucking good on that champion.
Mhm.
And yeah, that Monka S. If you're playing against Jensen's LeBlanc, and it looks like he'll be playing that a lot, you might have to be pulling some bans on that one.
Yeah, I think Jensen he's been getting a lot better.
Yeah. Anything else on TL?
Nope.
Let's go EG. They were number 5 on our list. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, the story's the same with EG.
Yeah.
They could beat anyone, they could lose to anyone, and I think we're going to expect to see that for the rest of the year. I don't think we're going to see any different. I do think Jizuke's looking better because he's not inting as much. We know he's going to run it down every once in a while, so that's not going to change. The one standout for me is that in one of Sven Skaren's post-game interviews, he pretty much acknowledged that, yes, they are running a 6-man roster. And so something to know is that I do expect to see contracts every now and then. I don't know how often, but they clearly have an idea that they want to use him in specific times. Last time they used him against TSM. What else? They also, I think they mentioned that they might use him against Team Liquid. Said name, help me
Artemis?
out here. No, other guy.
Peter Dunn.
Peter Dunn mentioned in one of his interviews that maybe they would consider using him against TL as well. So I don't know. Maybe they just got contract studying in the back rooms, like just focusing on your top teams, like just to hard study the enemy jungler and maybe use him for those. I don't know what their plan is, honestly, but expect to see both junglers every now and then.
Yeah. As far as like the inconsistencies are concerned, I think I don't remember if somebody said. I think I was like reading in like one of the takes chats for Hotline League, and somebody was basically saying that like it's a good thing that they're super inconsistent because it won't matter as much in best of fives. And I was like, dude, that is like such backwards thinking right there, because like that's part of the reason why I don't have a lot of confidence in this team in terms of making worlds or making a playoffs run, is because they are super inconsistent. And, while I do think that EG are looking better right now due to the climate of the league, because teams like Cloud9 and Team Liquid are underperforming and the bottom half of the league looks so bad, it's just it's just kind of boosting. It's just naturally boosting EG, and they are on a 5-game win streak. Pretty much could have almost had 2 back-to-back 3-0 weeks. They went 2-1 the previous week, went 3-0 this week. I think they are looking a little bit better because, like you mentioned, I don't think Jizuke is inting as hard as he was at the start of the split, but they're still super inconsistent, and it just doesn't give me a whole lot of confidence moving into the later parts of the season in terms of, hey, is this team going to make a playoffs run? And or is this team a world's contender when you still lose or have tough games against teams like Golden Guardians? And while I do think Golden Guardians is a much improved team, they easily could have lost that game, and I think could have lost that game.
Yep. Even though they went 3-0 this weekend, I think Artemis was even like, we beat all the shitty teams.
What was it? They beat Golden Guardians, CLG, and FlyQuest? That was their 3-0?
I think that's what it was.
Like,
it was bad.
You should go 3-0. Like, if you don't, that's a problem.
And Artemis, who's very adamant that they're going to Worlds, which, I mean, you could call him delusional, but he's also just their coach, so of course he's going to think that. But he's very adamant that they're going to Worlds. Even he is acknowledging, like, this weekend wasn't anything special.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it is what it is. The one thing that I will say was, I thought Impact looked awful in the one game against FlyQuest this weekend. He got hard gapped by Licorice. Unfortunately, Licorice still plays for FlyQuest, and so it just doesn't fucking matter. But Impact had a pretty rough game. I expect him to bounce back. I don't think that that's going to be anything that's going to happen on the regular, but it really did stand out to me just how much he got clapped. It kind of went under the radar because it's FlyQuest, right? And it's not going to lead to anything, but my God. It was nice to see Licorice win a lane for once in a while.
Yeah, I don't think Impact's had I wouldn't say he's had a bad split, but I don't think he's had like a great split by any means. I mean, we both had Impact as probably the second best performing top laner in the regular season in the spring split.
Yeah.
And I would definitely not put him on that level in terms of this split. But I do think that, if you compare EG right now to EG in the spring split of last year, I think the slight
wait. Spring split of last year?
Sorry, just spring split is what I meant to say. Okay. Just spring split. If you compare EG right now to EG in the spring split, I think they've had, a slight they've had decreases in both top and mid, but I think that their bot lane has been playing much, much better. I'm actually really starting to like Danny, and I think he's making really strong week over week improvements because it was clear that he was a very green player, the first couple weeks into the split, had decent laning mechanics in terms of, he was aggressive and got kills in the early game, but also was getting caught out a lot, did have bad positioning in team fights. And I think, week 4, week 5, week 3 and 4, and now in week 5 that we just saw, I think he had a really good weekend. I think he also had a pretty good week 4, and I think him and Ignar are really starting to gel. And should Jizuke and Impact maybe get back to that spring level or just even get a little bit better, I think then we could see EG be a team that could contend. But I think right now, we mentioned they're inconsistent, and that doesn't give me confidence moving into playoffs.
How about that outplay on Johnson?
That was sick.
Highlight, that play was kind of crazy.
It was like Doublelift was really praising him on that because he did R flash Gale Force auto, which is like kind of like a tight window in terms of like the mechanics necessary to do that. Because I remember watching Doublelift stream at the time, and he was like in practice still trying to copy the combo. Was giving him some slight props there because it was like he had perfect timing on his inputs there. But yeah, that was pretty gross. I'm kind of glad that Aphelios is back in the meta because I was getting quite bored with Kai'Sa Trist and then just seeing brain dead Ezreal. And I think Aphelios is in a much more balanced spot than he was 1 year ago. He's not quite as 200 years, and I think there's a lot of skill expression in that champion. And it's a champ that can do a lot of work and I think brings the most out of like the best AD carries can bring a lot out of that champion and perform really well on it.
Yeah, so I actually totally agree. Because so even though like sometimes there's some really good Ezreals and like you could actually see some nice Ezreal gameplay and that's cool and all, but overall I'm not a big fan of the poke stuff. So like
I forgot to mention I fucking hate poke Varus. Get that shit out of here. It's so fucking boring. It's just brain dead and it's boring. I just hate it when brain dead stuff is meta in pro play and it's just like constantly being spammed and it's not being nerfed. I think it has been slightly nerfed due to the Prowler's Claw changes. It's not as strong as it was. But I mean, it's still relevant, but I don't like that shit. Get it out of here.
Took the words right out of my mouth. I don't want to see the Varus either, honestly. Like, yeah. See nerf that shit. Anyways. I totally don't want to see that. I think there is way more skill expression with the champions like Aphelios and whatnot. So yeah, hopefully we see more of that. I'm also not a big fan of Kai'Sa either. I don't. A lot of people really like Kai'Sa, but like I don't know, you just wait for somebody else on your team to use some CC and then you hit R and hit Q. No, that stinks. I don't like that at all either. I'd much prefer. We're starting to see some Zaire Khan, which I mean,
I
while it's
like
kind of
Zyra Khan.
busted, yeah, it is nice to see like Zaya with her feathers. Is like there's some skill expression there.
Yeah.
But anyways, that's enough of that. You want to move on to Immortals now?
We got Immortals up next.
The other team that you can't count on and that you can't count out.
Yeah,
as we said last week, EG and Immortals are those.
yeah, it's hard because like even with Immortals, like yes, I think they haven't really beaten the top teams. Yes, they did beat Cloud9 once, and yes, they kind of pushed TSM in that one game. I'm gonna ignore them beating 100 Thieves at the start of the split, but basically this is kind of a team that just beats all the teams below them and loses to all the teams above them. And I do like Immortals. I like a lot of the players on their roster. I'm a big Insanity fan. I think I'm starting to like Revenge more and more because I think he isn't as invisible as he was in the spring split. And, I've slowly been hopping on the Xerxes train with you in that he's actually really, really good. And I would probably put him probably top 3 right now.
Yeah, I would.
I would put
him top 3. Most people would disagree with that because I don't know. Do you ever feel like teams have a hard time?
But who would you put over him? Like that would be my question to those people. Like I wouldn't put Blabber over him right now. I wouldn't put Sven Skjern over him right now. I wouldn't. Maybe Broxa, but like Broxa's on CLG, and it's like, ugh.
Xerxes over Broxa still for me. I love Broxa, don't get me wrong, but yeah, no, I agree. I think that he is a top 3 jungler right now, and I think people have a hard time with putting players that are on less popular teams in their higher power rankings. I do think that it's something that honestly fans struggle with because it's teams that they don't pay attention to that often.
I would say it's because they don't watch them and they just assume that like if a player's on a 6th place team that they're a 6th place player.
And we talked a little bit earlier when we were talking about Spica, like what does TSM look like without Spica? Well, what does Immortals look like without Xerxes? Fucking I would say that Immortals without Xerxes would be worse than TSM without Spica is the way that I would put it. Because I actually don't think that while I do think Immortals is an okay team, I do think that the majority of the heavy lifting is done through the jungle. So yeah, I do think that would be a really significant issue, and I think that Xerxes deserves some props for that.
Yeah, I would say this team heavily relies on mid jungle. I think slightly more towards jungle than mid, but it does feel like when mid jungle is struggling on this team, the laning of Revenge and Revenge and Race plus Destiny is not enough to sort of make up the deficiencies or maybe the deficits that Xerxes or Insanity might have in any given game. Because I think, their laning on top side and bot side is very, very volatile in terms of, Raze and Destiny get killed a lot in lane. And Revenge is not the best laner. I think he's a pretty good, if he can get on a good matchup and has jungle attention, I think he does have the ability to smash his lane. But in fairly isolated 1v1s and just lane phases, I don't think he's that strong of a player. And I think, when mid jungle does underperform, it is difficult for this Immortals lineup to win games. What I will say about Insanity, because I am a big Insanity fan, but I've slowly started to agree with Doublelift a little bit, that I think he's slightly getting propped up by this heavy bruiser meta, because while I do think that he still can be a good control mage player, so far his control mage games this split have not been the best. And, I'm not going to fault...
Has he played a lot of them, though?
He did early on, and they weren't that great. And he has been playing a lot of Nocturne recently. But, I mean, I'm not going to fault Immortals for picking a strong champion. Like, Nocturne's a really strong champ. Like, if you can play it, play it. Like, I'm not going to fault them at all for that. But I am slightly worried should we see Nocturne get banned out, get pushed out of the meta, and we do have to see, Insanity in Control Mage v Control Mage matchups against these top mid laners like Jizuke, Jensen, Perkz, Power of Evil, Abadage. But I would still favor him over the rest of those other bottom teams for sure.
So I actually was going to ask you about Insanity. I wanted to ask you, has he lost his Insanity? Because if you recall last year, you remember how many crazy ass fucking plays he was making? Like sometimes for the better and sometimes for the worse. It feels like we've lost that a little bit. which again, sometimes it can be for the better and sometimes for the worse. So I feel like we've lost the version of insanity that we saw last year, but I would also say that it feels like we've downgraded from the insanity that we saw in spring, and not by a major like I don't think there's a big difference, but I definitely feel like he's having less influence on the game that we saw back in spring. I was getting a lot of promise out of him in spring. I'm not getting that much in summer. I know you're a big insanity guy. Is this guy missing his juice, or what's going on
I
there?
mean, he definitely needs a refill. We'll say that. In terms of to your first point was talking about insanity from when we saw him when he, his rookie season and whatnot. And I think, is it a bad thing that we've lost, his insanity, like the insane plays that he does make? I think it's more, it's both good and bad. Good because I think he had to be doing those things in the first place because Immortals was really struggling, and somebody had to do something to start winning these games. And while
That's fair.
Insanity sometimes was making these really great plays, other times he was making these pretty int plays. I'll reference those two games on Oriana. One of them was against Team Liquid, where he kind of like hardcore through the game. But there's not as much of a need to go make these game-winning plays because the rest of the team can't make up for it. But I definitely would agree with you in that overall he's just having less game impact than he has been in the past. And I do think, he is slightly downgraded from his spring split form, because I would say that he was probably 5 or 6 in terms of, best mids in the league. And if I had to put a number on it right now, I might put him at like 7, because I think I would probably take a Blaze Olive over him right now. I don't think he's, down by that much in comparison to his spring form. But it's less. He's not having as much of game impact, but we'll see.
Yeah, it is interesting that we are seeing a little bit of difference. But I like the point that you brought up, that he may have needed to make those plays in the past because someone needed to do something, and now you've got Xerxes who's making a lot of plays,
Mm-hmm.
and so maybe you don't need to rely on insanity to be that insanity guy.
Yeah.
Um, so that is a good theory, let's say, and it's something to maybe keep an eye on. To your point on a Blaze Olive, do you want to go to Golden Guardians now?
We'll do Golden Guardians next. So I have them as
Let's do Golden.
7 as a quick reminder, and Blue Jay has them at 9.
Yeah, we're gonna go off your power rankings just for people wondering in what order we're gonna go with this. And so here's the thing: I definitely acknowledge that they are better. I think I've said that many times over the last few weeks. Like, this team is not the same team that we saw in spring. They are better. I still have them 9 because I can't rely on them to close out games. And something I mentioned to you over the weekend is that we always hear about the Dignitas Baron. Somebody start counting these throws at Baron for Golden Guardians, because like they lose so many games at Baron Pit. It is insane. And I think that this year specifically, they have definitely taken over that role of being the team that throws at Baron. My God. Now, the people that say, well, you have them at 9, like, do you think Dignitas or CLG are going to be any better at Baron? Maybe. like as we mentioned before when we were going through the list, like, these teams are all pretty close and just being straight up bad.
Yeah.
But the point is, I guess my main point is that I don't trust them to close out games, and we've seen that. However, they have still they're continuing their streak of getting a win every weekend, and so it's something for Golden Guardians fans to hold on to.
I really thought that they were going to get that second win this week. I had them over Dig on their game against Saturday. I got so tilted watching that game because they threw at Baron there, and it just made me so sad. And then I was like pretty excited when they were like in that Evil Geniuses game, and probably should have won that game when they like had triple Infernal Drake, and they got like a 4-for-1 fight, like, and was kind of like tied up the kill score after being down like 13-4, and I was like, oh fuck yeah, Golden Guardians about to win this game. 2-1 week BDG, let's go. And
they could have had a 3-0 weekend.
They could
honestly, if we're talking about
my hopes and dreams were crushed.
Yeah, unfortunately, coulda, woulda, shoulda. It's very CLG-esque, honestly, to should have won but didn't. So yeah, I mean, what else can you say? I still think that they're going to catch FlyQuest. We mentioned that. Let's talk about a Blaze Olive, because I know that you wanted to talk about him on Hotline tonight, and I think you did a little bit.
Yeah, slightly.
I don't recall.
Very little.
But the point is, I agree that I think a Blaze Olive is actually having such a better split than he was last split. I just think that again, he's another guy that's really unlocked by the LeBlanc pick. I think maybe it's just that's one of the picks that's really important for North American mid laners to play. But he looks good on it, and he's actually really getting a lot of kills and dealing a significant amount of damage in team fights. And so maybe we found a new pick that Olive can style on.
Yeah, I just think he's been super great this split in terms of both his like consistency and like being a carry on Golden Guardians. Like I was looking this up, he's fourth in the league in kills per game, and
Interesting.
he does, and he's like pretty high on DPM charts as well. And I think picks like the Zoe, like the LeBlanc. Unfortunately, sorry, Blaze Olive, I don't want to see your Lucian because I don't like your Lucian at all. Even though he's like, I think he's played like 4 games of Lucian this split and he's 0-4 on it. Somebody could correct me if I'm wrong about that. But I really like his Zoe, like his LeBlanc. I like his Viego as well. I think obviously Viego's a super OP pick right now, but I think he's been pretty solid on Viego for the most part. I would definitely rate a Blaze Olive at the very least, the 6th best mid laner in the league, maybe the 5th. I don't know who I would put below him. Maybe Jizuke, but I could be lying to myself if I said that I would rather take a Blaze Olive over Jizuke.
I think you are.
But I just think a Blaze Olive has been by far the best player on this team. And, we've talked about this many weeks now, each week with Golden Guardians picking up a win. Solo is much improved over Niles. Yes, Solo is not like the best top laner in the league and is not absolutely smashing people, but like he's not inting games. And I think that's what matters. And I think Chime has slowly but surely getting his feet under him. Like I think his first 2 weeks were really bad in terms of like making bad engages and not being super coordinated with this team. But it does feel like support is no longer dead weight for Golden Guardians anymore, just like top lane. I think Chime's all right. Obviously, he's not the best. He's probably one of the worst supports in the league, but he's better than Newbie, and we'll take those.
So the difference that I look at when it comes to Olive now versus Olive back in spring, or just Golden Guardians in general, it didn't feel like they had anyone that they could win games through back in spring.
And they can.
And now it feels like you got a guy that you could win games through, and I think that's why they're picking up some wins.
Even 6A, I think, is all right for that as well.
Yeah, and I don't want to beat a dead horse. We mentioned that in the top lane, rather, Solo is just better than Niles. Duh, we know that. We've talked about it to death. The other guy that I think is looking better and slowly going under the radar is Iconic. I think that he has had a significant improvement from spring to summer. And while I do think that this guy's got a long ways to go, I don't think he's as much of a liability as he was back in spring. And I've really liked to see Iconic. I think that he's been great on the Volibear. And so he's got a pick that he looks solid on. And so, yeah, if you're Golden Guardians, you have to be more than happy with your situation considering where you were back in spring. You might even make playoffs,
maybe.
Which is crazy.
If I was a betting man, I would bet Golden Guardians makes playoffs.
Yeah. And
one thing that
does that mean that you have CLG and FlyQuest not making it, or do you got Dig falling a mile?
Okay. No, I don't even think it's possible. I mean, technically they could if they go like 0-12 and somebody like that's not going to happen, obviously. But I think Dig has enough of a buffer where they're going to make playoffs as number 7 most likely, because I think Immortals is still 1 win behind them, or Immortals could be 1 win ahead of them. I don't remember. I think they're 1 win behind.
I'm glad that Golden Guardians and CLG are like neck and neck, and like it feels like you actually do have a race to make playoffs now, whereas like before, FlyQuest has been dog shit for they're on like a 10-game losing streak. They've looked bad for quite some time now. So like we could already count them out with how they're maybe we can't.
Yes, we can.
With how they're looking, I feel like we can anyways. And then like we didn't really feel like there was anyone else that was going to be in the race, but Golden Guardians has put themselves in that race where it's like it's interesting now. Like a Golden Guardians game and a CLG game is actually interesting because they're fighting for something now, which is nice.
One thing that I kind of don't like about the new format, not to say that I don't like the new format, but since that teams now play the other teams a collective 5 times over spring and summer split, we're basically going to see no tiebreakers at the end of the split in terms of if teams are tied record-wise, because the head-to-head records are never going to be equal. And that was always often the tiebreaker, was a team was 1-1 in the head-to-head, and therefore they'd play tiebreaker. And in this scenario now, I would assume they work off of the head. Well, even if they did head-to-head from summer or collective head-to-head from spring to summer, it's 5 total games or 3 total games. So Somebody's always going to be ahead. So I always thought that was
Yeah.
exciting when you'd have that one or two extra games on the last week, and the broadcast would go extra long, and it'd be like tiebreaker games. Let's go. But that's not going to
Yeah.
happen. So
Yeah. I agree. You know what was interesting is I don't know if you saw this, but Papa Smithy in live chat for Hotline tonight. Did you see that?
no, what do you say?
He said he doesn't think that next year's format is going to be the same.
I, I
I
would
don't
agree.
remember exactly how he worded it, but he thinks something's going to change. He didn't say what, and I don't like I said I don't remember exactly how he worded it, but maybe we should expect some change. I don't know what that's going to look like, but
Best of threes.
overall, here's what I wonder. I'll try to get through this quick because I think we want to get through our power rankings. But I wonder if, well, I don't think best of threes is going to happen. I mean, maybe it does, but I don't think so.
Come on.
With all the teams suffering so much like burnout issues, maybe they take away one of the round robins, like maybe you just spring and summer is weighted equally, and it gives more time for the team coming back from MSI to get that break in. And maybe that's what they're gonna do. Just extend the break for MSI. I don't know.
I don't think that's going to
my
happen.
theory at the moment.
I,
Why
I,
not?
Well, because then working under that assumed change, then it would be a 6-week spring and a 6-week summer.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they would, if they were to be doing something like that, I think they would probably revert back to the 9-week and just do two days of games a week where each team plays each team 2 times, but you would still do a collective spring to summer. So basically, you would revert to old LCS where you would play only on 2 days of the week. You play each team twice, but just the records would count as the same.
And you still continue to carry over your spring over to summer.
Yeah.
Interesting. It's possible.
If they were to make a change for those reasons, if they feel like there's a bit of player burnout and they need a little bit more time from MSI or whatnot, or they need an extra day in the week for like scrims or whatever, because I feel like that goes a little bit like under the radar. Like only 3 days of scrims, like that's not a lot at all.
The only problem with that, though, is that you're extending it to 9 weeks now, and you're not giving them that break, right? If you're not playing 3 games, you're not getting through games quicker anymore, and so you're not really getting that break. That if that's the argument that they were going to go with, like let's say they were like, we want our players to have longer break, the 9-week thing doesn't really change much. Is the only thing.
Well,
we're already doing 9 weeks, right?
At the same time, LCS does start 1 week, or at least in Summer Split does start 1 week earlier than the rest of the world. So they could also just push the season 1 week.
Anyways, we'll talk about that in a future episode, or maybe we'll learn more in the future rather. But for now, just all speculation. Let's go next team. Who do we got?
Yeah.
Dignitas. Man, Dignitas makes me sad to talk about.
Yep.
What can you say? There was the party
bus
hype or whatever, and now it's like Dardoch's gone, probably for good reason, but it doesn't make it feel any like better. Like it still just sucks. Saligo, I think, is better than Yasui, not by a mile, but better, honestly, that it makes a difference. Yeah, I think Acadian is the worst jungler. Let me think about that. I think he's the worst jungler.
Jose Dioto's not very good.
Jose Dioto is fucking bad. Okay, fine. They're tied for worst jungler.
I would probably rather take Acadian than Jose. Oh, man.
So,
Jesus Christ. I don't want either of them. I'd take Brendan.
Acadian. So right now, Acadian is doing this style where he's ganking a lot and fighting a lot.
And not farming at all.
Yes. And I think that is so bad. Because don't get me wrong, I think there is a valid way to play heavy gank. But it feels like he's doing it way too much. That 1, it's fucking predictable as fucking 2, he's just getting so hard punished. I don't even want to look at what his CSD is for jungle. It's probably atrocious because he's just getting hard gapped in farm, trying to make plays. Like sometimes, yeah, you'll get a kill, but it doesn't even matter because he's falling so far behind. Yeah, you need to have a balance there of how much you want to gank without losing too much in your jungle. And I think right now that even if the ganks are successful, he's not making up enough with the kills that he's losing out in jungle. I see your eyes. Your eyes are telling a story. Go
CSD at 15 is -15, and he's only been ahead in farm across his 8 games in only 1 of the games. Yeesh. And he's down 400 XP at 15, but he is only -88 in gold because, as you kind of mentioned, he does go for this more gank heavy style. But I think the problem is that style is not going to work against better teams at all whatsoever, because, as
And
you
it's
mentioned,
predictable.
exactly, it's a predictable style, and should your plays get punished, you're not farming and cycling your camps, which is super, super important at higher levels of league, because that's how jungle manages to stay relevant. Because if your plays are failing and you're not farming, you're just going to be underleveled as fuck with no items, having no impact, and the smarter junglers will just path better than you, not even do anything, and just be way further ahead than you,
Yeah, it
just
is
due to
not.
farming and better camp pathing and cycling.
It's not just about the trade-off for himself. It's not like he's just trading camps for kills. He's also giving those camps to the enemy jungler. So that's something else that you need to take into consideration. And so even if he's ganking heavy, he's still got a minus gold differential and obviously a minus XP differential. And so in the long run, it's just bad. Is the short of it. So I do think that he needs to find some different way to play the game. But I mean, that's for him to figure out. What else to say about Dignitas?
For me, it's just like a what could have been kind of thing, because I think
Yes, exactly.
because I think everyone recognizes like their bot lane's good. Like Neo and Aframu are a good bot lane. Like
Afro was the reason they beat TSM this weekend. I didn't hear
Yeah.
much talk about it. He had great engages. I thought he looked so good in that game against TSM. And of course, you never hear about it because everyone's still on the bandwagon that you got to copy this fire for Afro to retire.
I haven't even been seeing that, because I think rightfully so, he's been good.
The thing is, you haven't seen the copy and paste as much because he's been good, but it's like people are still hesitant to give him the praise that he deserves when he's absolutely hard carrying games because there's so much on this hype or this hate train. Like, I don't know. It's amazing to me how you don't ever hear about Afro, just being an absolute boss in the bot lane since last year. I don't think that he gets the credit he deserves. Yeah, I mean, I've said it a million times. I don't need to say it anymore. He's good. He's been good, and he's the rock of that team. Honestly.
Yep. Their bot lane's good. Fake God's not as good as he was in spring, and mid jungle is just abysmal. I mean, I don't even.
Let's just talk about CLG.
Yeah, honestly, Dig is gonna make playoffs because they got enough wins from spring split, but they are gonna get knocked out. Well, I guess I'm trying to remember how the bracket works. They're gonna be the 6th seed most likely, or at least the 6th seed.
Let me look at.
Oh no, they're gonna be the 7th seed if Immortals passes them, so they're gonna for sure be in the lower bracket. Yeah, this team's gonna get 3-0'd by whatever team of Immortals. Maybe not 3-0'd, but they're gonna lose to whichever team drops of Immortals or EG in the first round of playoffs. 100%. This team's not gonna win it. Team's not gonna win a series. They're fucking bad. No, they're not bad. They're just mid jungle is just so bad that they're not gonna be able to win.
Yeah,
because their bot lane's good, and I think Fake God's like he's all right. It was better in spring, but I just have no hope. That's the problem.
Yeah, my hope is kind of gone as well, and it's really sad. But yeah,
like with Golden Guardians, there's like some reason to like there is a little bit of hope, and with Immortals, there's a bit of hope, but with Dig, there's absolutely no hope.
I think anytime that there's improvement, I think that's like I don't think there. I would say that there's not hope for Golden Guardians as in like they're gonna win a series. I would say that they fall under the same category as Dignitas, as they're not gonna win a series. But it's still more encouraging because we saw them in such a deep hole in spring, and now we're seeing them actually win games. That it's like it just feels better to watch Golden Guardians than it does Dignitas at the moment. Even though I don't really think it matters. Like Anyways, let's go CLG now.
CLG.
They gave up on Bronzodia pretty quick, or Bongo, as people are like, whatever you want to call it.
I like both names. Either one works for me.
Yeah, I heard Bongo Dongo.
I like either one.
Yeah, they're funny, right? I don't know why they gave up on it. You look, we've clearly seen all year long that when you're not playing it, you're pretty fucking bad. You finally had a comp that you could actually run and look good on, and they kind of just gave up on it. And I think that if they go back to it, they can still take some games. I definitely think that this team should make playoffs if they decide to play what they're good at. But if they keep trying to branch out and play this other shit, I think Brox is in Elo hell at the moment. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, part of the reason why I think I put a lot of stock in CLG early on in the season was because I thought Finn was like gonna continue being a pretty solid top laner. But that's just clearly not the case. this guy's
We have not
awful.
seen that. Yeah, he's been bad.
This guy's awful. I mean, he's obviously not like probably what am I even saying here? He's clearly not like an absolutely terrible League of Legends player because he's shown that he can be decent. He was pretty decent towards the end of Spring Split on CLG. He was pretty good on Rogue. Like he succeeded at pretty high levels for the most part. But just his performances right now are just absolutely dog shit. I just want to cry when I watch Finn play top lane. He's so bad.
I think the issue is that right now he is absolute dog shit, but we think he can be better. And I think that's
Yeah.
the thing that people struggle with is like look, people said when he was in Europe that he wasn't a good top laner. The thing is, I didn't think he was that great of a top laner in Europe, but I definitely thought that he would come over and be able to compete in the LCS. And he did that for the most part in spring. Like he had some bad performances every once in a while,
Well,
but like
he had just
as
had a
the
really bad start, but even before CLG kind of went on that late game resurgence, he was the best player on that team when they were losing before those last 2 weeks. Then they started winning, and he was looking good. I was like, okay, they're gonna like hopefully they continue, and then they'll be good. But then it just completely reverted to when he came in. Like it looks like he just joined the team and had just flown in from Europe, like he did at the start of Spring Split. He looks.
yeah.
I don't want to talk about Finn anymore. God
Yeah,
damn it.
he's losing both sides of matchups as Doublelift has highlighted many times. I think
And
that
that
is
is
fair
really
criticism.
bad. Like,
Yeah, I think that is fair criticism, and he just pretty much solo lost CLG the game. Was he playing against solo? Was it that game?
there's been a lot of games where
When
he
he was
solo
playing the
lost them.
Akali, he was playing Akali, and I'm pretty sure it was against Solo's Renekton. He got absolutely stomped, and yeah, they pretty much just lost the game off of that. I think if they go back to playing Bronzodia, I think this team is actually able to take. Well, we saw they were able to take games. They took a game off 100 Thieves playing Bronzodia. Like, stop. You're just trying to make playoffs here. You don't need to be fancy and play a bunch of different styles. They have enough picks that, first of all, teams aren't even banning out the Bronzodia, by the way. I paid attention to like the bans, like Galio still being left up against them. Not to mention, even if you're not playing the Galio, they were playing the Lissandra with it. Finn was playing Kled. They were playing Vi. Like, these are things that are being left up. They still have the option to play this style. They're just not taking it. And so I'm quite puzzled with it, honestly.
Yeah, I mean,
Turtle's doing some stuff. Honestly, it also feels like they're doing some things that makes no sense. There was the one Rift Herald play where Turtle was going to rotate to Herald and then decided not to, decides to show in bot lane as the rest of CLG is contesting Herald. And of course they wiped because the other team rotated their bot laner. It's like, there's just no world where that makes sense. Either you're Turtle and you shouldn't be showing on the bot wave, or you're CLG and you're going, yeah, we're going to send our AD carry back bot lane. We shouldn't even be fighting for Herald in the first place. That is basic League of Legends here. Like, my God, what the fuck? And it's frustrating because, as I've been very vocal about, I'm cheering for CLG, and it's so frustrating because this is stuff that you shouldn't have to teach an LCS level team. Yeah. Anyways, it's hard to watch.
last thing that I'll say about this team, I'm gonna hard flame. Pobelter should retire. He's checked out.
Whoa.
He's checked out
Copy this
hard.
fire for Pobelter to retire.
He's just mentally checked out. It seems. It's like his. Yeah, there's just no. I don't even know how to
So
explain
here's
this.
the thing: Pobelter has definitely fallen off. But for me, one of the issues was like in that game with the Akali, he TP'd to the lane to try to help out the Akali, and then he just died. And then Pobelter ended up getting that whole wave top. But then he's just giving over an advantage to the mid laner.
I'm not even
by
talking about just
sacrificing
like
his wave.
specific games or situations. Like I just think spring and summer of this year is just like this guy is just fallen off. I think he's
has.
done. I
It's
don't
sad,
want to see
too.
him again.
He was the reason I became like a FlyQuest fan back in the days when I love Pobelter, but we are definitely seeing I get nervous watching Pobelter side lane because I don't trust him to be there and live. Like, you can't put him in a side lane; he's going to die. He overextends so often. Yeah, I don't know.
Even with Finn playing so terribly as of late, I would still, if I had to make one replacement on CLG, I would make it in the mid lane because I think Finn has the chance to be better. Where I don't think Pobelter does.
I think most people would agree that Brox is the only one that's really performing for CLG, but he's just in a really rough spot. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean,
I think Brox has actually had a pretty decent split. It's just really hard to look good when you're on a really bad team.
Given the circumstances, I think TL wished they still had him.
Interesting,
Would
because
you take
absolutely.
5 Fire over Pope? 100%. 100%. Although I think 5 Fire looks like
Really?
a fucking weirdo, because at least in
Okay,
terms of
come on,
like,
man.
well,
Don't be
dude,
like that.
have you seen his like player headshot? It looks super weird. I think he's solid. He used to be, I don't know what team he's on. No org right now, if I'm not mistaken. And he
I
previously
don't know
was
enough
on.
about 5 Fire, honestly.
Well, he was
So
previously on EG Academy because he was their like somewhat replacement mid laner because they were like importing an academy mid laner from like Iran or something like that. If I remember correctly, his name was like Ewan. And then they signed 5 Fire. He's been pretty good. I think he was on no org and they won Proving Grounds. I would take 5 Fire over POB. 100%.
interesting. I can't fault you for that. I mean, I actually don't know what I would do because I don't know enough about 5 Fire. But I think the main point is that like you're looking to try out something else, throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks. Because we just know that Pobelter isn't working, so it's like a let's try something else kind of approach. So maybe I would actually also take 5 Fire, even though I don't know what you're getting out of it. But yeah, I would obviously have to get more informed before I made that kind of decision.
Funnily enough, he actually in the whole like scouting grounds draft or whatever, he was picked by CLG. And we're kind of like
For the
talking
record,
about
this was
him
a question
while
that was brought up in the live chat for people
yeah.
listening and going, "Where the hell did this come from?" This was a live chat question.
Yeah.
You want to get on the FlyQuest now?
I mean, we have to, I guess. I don't really want to I don't have anything good to say.
So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to stand up for my boy Johnson, not because I think he's been great, but because I saw some absolute dog shit takes in the live chat for Hotline tonight. There were multiple people saying that Jose Dioto is let me find I wrote it down somewhere.
Were people
Oh yeah.
just like fanboying over Jose Dioto? Because if
So
they
hold
are,
on.
they're not
I
watching
got
the
it
games
here.
that I'm watching because Jose Dioto's terrible. Or right now
I
he
got
is.
it. I got it here. So people were blaming Johnson for breaking Jose Dioto's spirit
Oh,
when he
because of the
took
Kindred
the
thing? Nah,
yeah.
miss me
And
with that.
miss me with that because that is like let me tell you something. Johnson is not having a good split. Let me tell you something else. No one on FlyQuest is. That to me is such a scapegoat take that you're just looking for someone to blame for all of this. Let me tell you, FlyQuest, top to bottom, is absolute dog shit right now. And
Hey,
yes,
I got a
Johnson
question
is a
for you.
part of that. Hold on. Johnson is a part of that. But to throw it all at Johnson's feet because he took a fucking scuttle crab? Are you kidding me? That I was like, I couldn't believe that I saw multiple people in the live chat being like, yes, this whole team's fault. This whole downfall is all Johnson's fault because he took the scuttle crab. Miss me with that shit.
Yeah,
Go
okay.
ahead. What's your question?
I know I don't remember if this was last week's episode or the one before where we kind of talked about how like if you were to keep anybody on this FlyQuest roster, who would you keep? And we did somewhat talk about how, Jose Dioto kind of has more like brand while he hasn't been very good, obviously, he does have like brand value. I want to ignore that for a second.
Yeah, definitely.
And just say like if you had to keep one player, or I guess the question would be like, who do you think has been FlyQuest's best performing player or not worst performing player?
Ooh.
I would pick Palafox personally.
Yeah, a lot of people are saying Palafox. The thing is, for me with Palafox is I don't think he's done anything either.
I don't think he has, but I think he.
So it's like I don't agree, but I don't disagree. That's my issue with Palafox. Is like I don't think that you're solving any problems by keeping him.
Yeah, like because the only thing because I was just thinking about this because we did talk about this either a week ago or 2 weeks ago how like they could keep Jose Dioto because he does have like brand value and he could be a guy that like you keep around for like your brand, like I just mentioned. But in terms of like players that I would actually want to see continue to be on the LCS, specifically on this team, because they most likely wouldn't get another shot on a different team based on this year's performance, would be Palafox. I think he's obviously not great, but I think he's, not absolutely terrible. I think he has like the best laning on this team. I think quite often he's actually going even in a lot of these lanes, and he's actually, standing his ground with a lot of these other LCS mid laners. Obviously, I think his laning is his best aspect. I don't think he's the best, he's the greatest team fighter or side laner or, control mage player and whatnot, but I do think he does do a lot of great things on picks like Silas, picks like Twisted Fate. Those I would say are his two best picks. But yeah, there's not a lot of good things to say about this team. Johnson
The
is a bit sad because of how much we were hyping him up on Dignitas, and for good reason, because he was playing really well.
Yeah, he was great.
But
He's
it's
just not
just,
anymore.
yeah. I was also under the assumption that I thought Dreams would kind of have a bigger impact than Diamond would. It's interchangeable. They're both not doing a whole
I would
lot.
I think I would take Dreams over Diamond.
It's like a 51-49, I think, for me. Like,
Yeah, I don't think you would notice much. Well, we're not noticing much of a difference, so
yeah.
there's that. Um, the one thing that I wondered about FlyQuest is when you are this much like in the dumps, like you've lost 10 in a row, you're pretty sure that you're not going anywhere as far as playoffs are concerned. I mean, there's definitely still a chance. They have 9 wins, right? They're close to a playoff spot. Um, but I feel like if at this point, if you're FlyQuest, you don't even want to make playoffs. Which I think is like a bad way to
That's
look at things.
yeah.
It's an awful way to look at things. But at this point though, why would you? Like everything you do, you just get shit on by the community every week. I mean, we shit on them every week, not because we want to, but because they're bad. Like if you're FlyQuest right now, I feel like there's actually a chance that there are players on that team that don't even want to make playoffs, which is just
Yeah.
it's a terrible way to look at it, but I don't even know if I could blame them if that was the case. Now, of course, no one's ever going to admit that, right?
hmm
But like, do you want to go get embarrassed in a 5-game series right now after you've lost 10 in a row?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, Artemis said this as well in Hotline. Like, if they actually still like want to try to make playoffs or like want to even try to keep competing, just put in your whole academy roster. I have no problem with them doing that. I
Even just for
honestly
a mental reset wouldn't be too bad. Even
no. Well, I think at this point, I would throw the academy roster in just for the rest of the split and see if they can do anything. I was kind of surprised that they didn't continue with any substitutions after they put in Tomo, Kumo, and Diamond on the last day of the previous week, and then they did no roster changes at all whatsoever this week. It was pretty surprising to me. If I was managing FlyQuest right now, I would just throw their whole academy roster in for the rest of the split, and just see what happens.
yeah, it's not a terrible idea because, and one of the points that people have made around that idea is that at least you can get an idea of what you want to try to build around for next year. If you have some of these players under contract, then maybe you give them LCS and maybe you could see if there's one of them that you want to promote for next year. You know for sure that there's no chance you're running back the same 5 next year.
Yeah, no
That
shot.
can't be happening.
No shot.
So maybe you try to see what you've got and start experimenting now. And I would be okay with that, honestly. I think most people would be okay with that because they just look like an absolute dumpster fire right now. And it
Yep.
feels bad because I like all of the players on this team. They all seem like good guys, but it's clearly not working and something needs to change.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that is it for our power rankings. We've gone 1 through 10. Do you want to get to our awards now?
Yep. We got Popoff, Beansoup.
Who's
Popoff.
going first?
I had lost for my Popoff.
Okay.
Mainly because I thought, his laning, which I would normally say is his weakest aspect, it was his greatest aspect this weekend. And, I guess to specifically talk about like the Cloud9 TSM game, I think Lost and Sword Art, or more Lost, like did his job almost perfectly in that game. And I think, it was more on the rest of TSM to kind of close out that game. And I don't really fault Lost at all. In TSM's struggle to close that game out because he's playing Callista, like such a short range, you have to play with your team kind of champion, as opposed to, a champion like maybe like an Aphelios or sorry, not Aphelios, a Kaisa or a Strasana, one that has to be going in and making plays, to have a lot of game impact.
Yeah.
But I thought he just played really well.
Yeah, honestly, the bot lane for TSM in general just had a good step up weekend, which is something that TSM fans really needed to see, I think. So that was pretty good for them. Myself, I went with Olive, specifically how now I mentioned before, you've got a guy that you could play through in Golden Guardians. I think that is the biggest part of why we're seeing them actually pick up some Ws in the summer split. I think Olive is the biggest part of that. And so I think that he just deserves the shout out. So Popoff, Olive. Hope that guy keeps firing on all cylinders. That's a nice cliche thing to say. Yeah, I'm happy for Olive.
Yeah, Beansoup, I couldn't really decide between like just all of CLG and all of FlyQuest, but I went with all of FlyQuest, man.
Oh, okay, good.
Ah, We don't need to talk about it anymore.
Yeah, I don't want to go beat down on FlyQuest anymore. We've already done plenty of that. The only thing I'll say for CLG, because I went for CLG, that's why I said okay, good that you went FlyQuest, is I want them to pick the one comp that they can pick up wins on. I don't know why they gave up on it. If teams aren't banning it out, it's literally the only thing you've looked good on all year. Pick up some fucking W's, make the playoffs. Come on, and I'll leave it at that.
Alrighty.
Predictions?
Yep.
Week 6 prediction.
One sec.
Take your time.
There we go.
I can't see it yet on the thing, so
Oh,
talk.
Is it up? It should be up right now.
Yeah, it's up now. It's up now.
Okay, good.
Okay, so starting off with the one thing that people like to talk about as a rivalry, even though most people acknowledge that it is no longer a rivalry, is TSM versus CLG. On Friday, I am going to take TSM. Who are you going to take, Jay at T250? Oh, TSM. Okay, next.
Yeah. Wait. We can just go next on this one as well. Cloud9 versus FlyQuest.
Cloud9.
Golden Guardians versus 100 Thieves.
100 Thieves.
Yeah, that's again a pretty obvious one. EG versus Immortals. This one's pretty interesting. What do you think about this one?
I am going to go Evil Geniuses.
I'm thinking about it. I am thinking about it. I'm going to take Immortals for right now.
I think Immortals has the jungle advantage, but I think EG has the everywhere else advantage. Let me think about that. Bot lane, yeah. Mid lane, yeah. Top lane, yep. I think EG just has the most of an advantage there. So wait, you took Immortals?
For now. Check my
Oh,
Twitter for changes.
This guy's gonna it's Friday games. But okay, anyways, you got Immortals, I got EG. Next we got Dignitas and Team Liquid.
Team Liquid.
I think that most people would just say Dignitas isn't very good, and therefore we go with Team Liquid. A lot of lopsided ones. Although you know what though, in weeks past, whenever we say oh lopsided games this week,
yeah,
then
a bunch of upsets. Yeah, exactly.
So, anyways, Team Liquid over Dignitas. Next up, Saturday, first game is Golden Guardians versus TSM. TSM for me. Although you know what, I can't take an upset. TSM.
TSM.
I want to get behind the hype of Golden Guardians starting to look good, but if they get a lead, they're gonna throw it at Baron. So I mean, fuck.
Yeah, yeah.
TSM. All right, TSM.
EG versus Immortals. Wait, I just said that again. Sorry, Team Liquid versus Immortals. Team Liquid. Alphari is gonna be back. 100%. You heard it here first.
You're just gonna run that one back every week until is that the play? Okay.
100 Thieves versus EG. 100 Thieves. They're really good.
I don't know if I said it. I'm just gonna say TL over Immortals. Maybe I did say it.
I mean,
I don't know if I did, but TL over Immortals. 100 Thieves over Evil Geniuses for me as well. There.
Cloud9 versus Dignitas. Me, Cloud9, please.
Cloud9. We have one different pick in there.
Well, what I was gonna say is, I believe Dignitas is them and FlyQuest are the only team that Cloud9 has the perfect head-to-head record on. Cloud9 is lost or does not have a 0 against all of Immortals, Golden Guardians, and EG and whatnot. Cloud9 actually does. Cloud9 has a losing head-to-head against 100 Thieves. Actually, sorry, they're tied with 100 Thieves. They're losing against TSM, EG, which I thought was pretty interesting. They're getting a bit owned there.
Yeah. Okay, so Cloud9 over Dignitas, CLG FlyQuest, JNT.
Fucking Christ.
I get the feeling you might lean one different way, but maybe not. I'm gonna go CLG. Yeah, I mean both these teams are bad, but I think CLG is a little bit less bad.
I'm gonna pick CLG. With the caveat that if FlyQuest puts in their whole academy roster, I'm gonna take FlyQuest just because I think they get a mental reset and 5 players whom aren't boomed out of their mind, maybe they can beat CLG.
Okay, and then we got this is Sunday. We got Team Liquid versus Golden Guardians. Yeah, I still can't take Golden Guardians on this one.
Yeah, Team Liquid.
So here's the thing with Golden Guardians is I've mentioned this a million times. They've gotten a win every week, but this week they're against 100 Thieves, TSM, and Team Liquid.
They're gonna
If
get
there's a week
one.
for them to go 0-3, it would be this week. Maybe
This
they pull a rabbit out of their hat.
the
But
script
anyways,
says that they get one, so it'll just
okay,
be a mystery which they get one
gotcha.
off of.
Well, Team Liquid for me.
Evil Geniuses versus Cloud9. As I just mentioned, EG actually has a winning
Ooh.
record against Cloud9. I believe it's 1-2. Sorry, well, 2-1 in EG's favor. I'm gonna go Cloud9 though.
I am also going to go Cloud9. I think this should be around the time that Cloud9 starts to ramp up. While they get more practice with their full roster,
Yeah.
I think
And
that
I
they're
do
just going to
think they
get better as
have,
the split goes on. I think they start to ramp up this week.
and I think for this matchup specifically, I think they have some nice warm up games as well against FlyQuest and Dig.
Okay. Well,
Um,
Cloud9 over EG. 100 Thieves, TSM.
I am gonna take TSM.
Okay. Proceed.
Well, mainly just for the reason that I just have the feeling that TSM is going to win. But I still think that 100 Thieves is definitely going to be the better team. I just think that there's going to be some bullshit draft that goes on where 100 Thieves is going to try to draft early game and TSM is going to have a better late game comp. And either nothing's going to happen early or 100 Thieves is going to fail like 1 or 2 plays. The game will stall and TSM will win. That's my prediction on how that game will go. But it's just like, who fucking knows? Like, I'm just guessing.
I think 100 Thieves will just outpace them, honestly. I think that they're going to make plays in the early game. I don't think TSM will, and I think that that's a game that 100 Thieves wants to play. So 100 Thieves for me. But that should be a good game. 1 and 2 right now in our power rankings playing each other. Obviously could go either way. FlyQuest and Immortals is the next game. I've been very vocal about how I think FlyQuest is caca, so let's move on. Immortals over Fly. Dignitas and CLG.
Fuck.
Interesting. Where did you have CLG in your power rankings again? You had them 9?
9.
Oh.
I guess I have to take Dig if I'm going with that logic.
Dignitas big favorites here.
I mean, I'm gonna go Dig. I have no clue. Just Dig. I Dig.
CLG. Let's fucking go, CLG. Let's go. I never give up. Never give up on CLG.
Also, just
until the end of the year.
For the audio people who can't see the predictions on screen, Blue Jays still trailing me by 2 wins.
2 W's.
Golden Guardians, they let me down because I had them over Dignitas, and I was so sure that they were going to beat Dig, and I was going to pick up an extra win there. They fucking lost to Dig. I was really fuming about that one.
At least the math is done correctly this time, we think.
It is.
You've had a couple struggles with your prediction math in the last couple of weeks.
I'm absolutely sure.
Okay, let's go quick news. Let's get into it. I added one to quick news, by the way, but we'll get to that.
A little bit of quick news. Schalke put out a statement about the sale of their team, basically saying that Team BDS will be the org acquiring them, even though there was that like whole weird like cryptic kind of like post that got taken down on like the Manchester City Twitter talking about like with some like LEC thing or whatever. But they basically just put out a statement about the sale of their team, saying how they're selling it for 26.5 million euros, which is like roughly $32 million US. It's a fucking lot of money.
Yep.
Because I would assume that an LEC slot is much more valuable than an LCS slot. Because I mean, when franchising came around, to buy into an LCS team if you were a new org was 13 million, and for existing orgs it was 10 million. And I think in terms of like valuations, I would probably put the LEC above them.
The thing is, the LEC is the better league. I don't think anyone would argue that. But the thing is, the better league doesn't necessarily mean there's more value to being in that league. Because that's why North America is always like
they have more
able to buy all these players is because the money's in North America. You get way more money out of sponsorship, right? Because
I mean,
definitely, because you have you don't need to target in one language, but you can reach almost everyone with one language in North America, whereas you can't reach everyone in Europe with one language. That's the reason why in North America the money is so much better, is because the sponsors, it's much easier to acquire a sponsor in North America, I would have to believe. I'm sure there are other factors, but that's a big one, right? So anyways, yeah, that's a lot of fucking.
Staying on the EU news, Dardoch joined ICM Stellar Esports, which is an EU management agency, and there was like kind of rumors saying that he might try to join like an EU Masters team next year. I don't know.
Mark did that thing on Hotline tonight. He acknowledged that he doesn't like doing it, but he's like, I heard a rumor, but I can't say what it is or who told me. So I think there's something else about Dardoch that's going to come out soon, but for now, this is the only rumors that we have. But I'm keeping my eye out to see what happens with Dardoch. I think something should happen soon, or at least Mark hinted that something has happened or will be happening. But I mean, I don't know if I could get any more vague on that.
Yeah. Okay. Next up, there was a bit of drama in the LLA with Wadid's team, or Wadid, whichever you prefer. Yeah. I believe his team is like the Knights, or like the All Knights or something.
Uh-huh.
Something Knights.
Whatever it was, doesn't fucking matter. Honestly.
Basically, there was a bunch of back and forth on Twitter with him and a few of his other teammates. He also plays the other name that is notable if you're an LCS viewer on that team is Ruin, former CLG top laner, is on that team. Basically, just saying how like their team completely mental boomed and like for fun a match in their league, and there was a huge backlash from all the various LLA fan bases because like it's pretty like BM and disrespectful to be like for funning a serious match like in the league that's not like a throwaway match at the end of a split kind of thing. And so there was like did put out like a huge tweet longer, basically saying that he's probably going to retire and not play pro anymore. It's
there's a lot to get into on this one, guys. Yeah. That like I don't think we want to get into all of it, but here's what I'll say. So it was posted on Reddit 5 days ago, and it's titled "Drama in LLA Involving Team All Knights, Wadid Ruin X CLG." That's the title of the Reddit post. There's a lot to read in there, but it is very, very interesting, and so it's something that we couldn't.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot to go through.
Yeah, it was something that's really interesting, and so I would encourage people that haven't read the Reddit thing to have a read, because it's just, I don't know, it's just really, really weird, some of the things. And I guess he stepped down. He tweeted out that it's his own decision to leave the team, and most likely I'm done with playing from now on, which is like a really weird way to retire.
Yeah.
I guess he says my first goal is recovering my health, so I guess he's got some health issues. Just whack stuff.
It's a lot of stuff in there.
Yeah, really, really interesting.
Yeah. Next up, Damwon. They're back to their regular roster now. No more role swapping with Malrang jungle, Showmaker ADC, Kenya mid lane. They're back to their original roster, but they also called up their LCK challenger spot laner. I don't know how to pronounce this exactly. Rahal.
I don't know, man.
No. Damwon's back, I guess.
They beat Gen G 2-0.
I thought it was 2-1. Was it 2-0?
I think it was 2-0.
Okay.
I'm fairly certain it was 2-0.
Beating Gen G.
Now you're making me question, but I think it was 2-0. It doesn't matter. They beat Gen G, and Gen G was undefeated. They were 7-0 on the split, and now they're 7-1.
Yeah, pretty notable, I think, because I think Gen G pretty much smacking everybody, and it was 2-0. I just checked. But pretty notable, taking down the #1 team, and who was looking like a really, really strong team, because Gen G is super, super good. I think Clid and BDD are smurfing a little bit.
Yeah, I started watching a lot more LCK. Like after the first couple of weeks, I hadn't watched any, but I started watching a lot more. Gen G is looking like the best team right now in the LCK, and for Damwon to 2-0 them was a really big statement win, because they had been struggling pretty much like all the other MSI representatives have been struggling. They had a bunch of roster moves and stuff like that. Like JNT mentioned, roster's back. Big win for them, and so we'll see if they can get back on top. But I think still for now, they're still the best. Gen G is still the best team, I would say.
Humble Life finally picked up a couple wins. They're not completely hopeless anymore. They're 3-5. Yeah, they're on the comeback.
There's a lot of 3-5 teams and a lot of 5-3 teams. Like, they're not too far. Yeah, they Hanwha Life can still make their way back. Chovy's still getting a bunch of solo kills in the mid lane.
Chovy's so good. He's so good.
He is quite so good.
If Faker retires at the end of this year, please put Chovy on T1.
Interesting.
I want to see
Yeah,
that.
that is not out of the realm of possibility. That is very, very possible. The thing is, you're a Hanwha Life guy.
I know. Well, I mean, I
You're gonna,
am, but
you're
I'm
just gonna
also a
give up
Chovy
your
guy.
boy
Well, no, also root for Hama Life, but I just like Chovy so
for the
much.
betterment of the player.
Well, I'm meaning more in a situation like where Faker retires because T1 performs bad, and Hama Life also performs poorly in Mrs. World or something like that. And if
Yeah.
T1 doesn't make the decision that they want to move forward with, or they didn't want to like start Closer right away, Closer with the Z, not Closer, the jungler for 100 Thieves. There.
It's time for the bird to leave the nest and for Chovy to go to a better place.
Chovy's a beast.
Okay, what's next?
Last up on, oh, not last up, I completely lied. Next up, Travis Gafford put out a video regarding a survey that he released a couple months ago, talking about LCS viewership and why it's declining, and basically polling the community why their reasons for not watching as much, and why what certain factors play into them wanting to watch LCS, and just trying to get somewhat of an idea of why the viewership's declining, because we actively try to look at the viewership for LCS on a week-to-week basis. Dude, the viewership is getting bad. Like, it's really bad right now.
Well, it is spread out because of co-streaming.
I mean, it is. It's still bad.
Yeah, right. It doesn't account for all of the. But you know what, though? I noticed that it's the same thing in the LEC as well. Now, the only difference is in the LEC, there's a lot of other languages that it's being broadcast in. But I'm definitely still noticing a significant drop-off in the LEC, which could be in part to G2 looking a lot worse.
Probably.
G2's got a losing record at the moment.
Oh, God. That Misfits game was pretty hilarious.
Yeah, and honestly, like, that's gonna really, really hurt you. So yeah, it's like that, and I don't know if that's something that is going to continue to drop, but we're definitely seeing a significant drop off that is noteworthy. Let's put it that way.
It's hard to summarize what was put out in Travis's video, because there's a lot to it and a lot of different talking points and discussion topics with the results that were found. So I highly suggest going and watching the video, and you can kind of form your own opinion about it, because there would be a lot to get into for that. But I think it was very good. I remember I filled it out myself, back when it came out, because I remember he like plugged it at the end of a Hotline League episode. Go watch the video; it's good. Last up from me, I know you said you had one extra thing on your list, but we were talking about the LEC for a little bit. The LEC, the players will be back in the studio on stage next week, they say.
Which is that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think it's better when the players are in like the regular environment where they're supposed to be, as long as they're not freezing their asses off or having like strobe lights be put in their face. Other than that, it's a good thing having players back in the studio, and I'm sure it'll just be better for the league. Yeah, just good things. The one thing that I wanted to add to the list is that Dom's going to be casting the LPL.
Oh yeah, I saw that yesterday. I'm excited for him.
What day is that? I'm
the 11th, I think he said. I think it was the 11th he said.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool for him. Dom's really gotten a lot into the LPL specifically. I want to say this split, but I mean he also did.
Yeah, last split as well, but mainly I think he's basically shifted his whole content around the LPL, because he's allowed to co-stream it. Before, he was only live viewing it. And they've integrated him quite a lot in terms of their broadcast. He, I think, mentioned also on Twitter that he was on the English analyst desk last week, like not or for this previous week of LPL, and he's gotten a lot of promotion and notice on Twitter from the LPL English community. So I'm happy for him. I like Dom. He's a polarizing figure, but he's been my de facto LPL guy for the time being.
Definitely something worth noting, honestly. So yeah, I thought it was something that we needed to add to the list. That's all I got. Anything else you got?
Nope.
Okay, let's do the regular spiel, guys. Make sure to mash the subscribe button. It matters to us a lot. And also, don't be afraid to drop a prime on the Twitch channel, because, well, we need them primes. We said that we were going to get our emote this week.
I forgot about that again.
I thought about it today, but we didn't have time to do anything about it, because I knew that you had shit going on. So I
thought about it. I thought about it right when I was like pulling up the stream, and I was like, shit.
We gotta get that emote. But anyways, please send us those prime subs if you have them. If you're not using them, we will really, really appreciate that. And just huge shout out to you guys listening every week. We love you guys. Anything you want to shout out, JNT?
No.
Will we be on same time next week, JNT? I know that at some point you're moving around in July, but it's towards the end, we think. So same time
Yeah,
next week.
it's gonna start getting weird on July 26th for about 3 weeks for me.
But we got some time till then. So we will be back same time next week. Everything is the same for now, guys. Thank you guys so much. This has been episode 49 of the Clown Fiesta podcast. See you guys next week.
Bye bye.